This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. Here we are, April 28th, 2021. And I got a returning guest today. I had him on, I think it was a couple years ago, almost a year ago, or not a year ago, almost 2 years ago to the date. Had him on in May 2000, I think 2019 it might have been. I
Okay.
think so. But I could be wrong on that, but don't quote me.
Hey,
But I
whatever
have
it
the
is. Time
director.
flies though.
I have the director of Never Hike Alone back with us today. Welcome, Vincent DiSante.
You're doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I love your background. Me, I'm just kind of standard here, I'm just in a cubby apartment. I'm in between places until we get moved and I can get a better background. But you got everything all red there. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I bought those lights that you can like change the colors of, and when I'm working kind of in this is also, I mean, my home studio. I have a editorial set up, and I do a lot of work here.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I do a lot of like the shipping of Blu-rays and everything from shipping of Blu-rays to writing the scripts to doing the shot lists and call sheets and all that stuff. I do it all right here. So I don't know. I kind of like to dim it down, change the lights, change the mood, so I kind of get like because when you're here for, especially for the last year with COVID and everything, being home a lot, I like to spruce it up. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a nice kind of, when I do podcasts, I can shift the background to any kind of background color I want. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah. I wish COVID would take a long awaited hike.
Mm,
I work
hopefully
as
be
I,
there soon.
I'm an essential worker. I work as a cleaner,
Mm,
so I've worked through the pandemic, but I do this because I enjoy doing it,
nice.
and our station's closed. So I was like, well, it was Nancy McLaughlin who said to me, she said, if she can do Zoom, I can do Zoom. So I was like, okay, well, I got my brother to hook me up with Zoom. He's not on Zoom himself, but he figured it out because he's a
Yeah.
tech guy, and here I am. You're number 41 this year,
Wow,
so
look at you. You're off to the races.
I'm loving this, and I could just, I mean, I haven't left the station per se, I mean, I'm still a member, but it's like, I love the fact I don't have to call and schedule time in a studio,
Mm,
you know, I could just do it like this. This is so great. I was able to just schedule you right on the day, which was perfect.
nice. Yeah. It makes it really
Yeah.
casual. If we're ready to go, we can just hop right on.
Yeah. And we're both involved in 13 Fanboy. I
Yes,
got
we
a
are.
very early T-shirt because this has got Tom Matthews on it, and it's got Adrian King on it, I believe. So,
Mm-hmm.
who are unfortunately had to leave the project.
Yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah. Well,
It was too scary for her.
It was too scary for Adrian. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It was some of the scenes that she was going to be in. I believe Deb ended up doing the role for that, which ended up working out because Deb's awesome. She's an amazing actress. And yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, the cast is amazing. I mean, you got Dee Wallace, C.J. Graham, Jodie Aronson, Tracy Savage, as you brought up before we started recording, Ron Sloan, and a slew of other, Friday the 13th. That's Corey Feldman came back to do a couple of scenes. Andrew Lady from Never Hike Alone is in it. He plays the lead actress's boyfriend, the lead character, played by Haley Greenbauer, who's actually a good friend of mine who I've worked with through Womp Stomp Films DP Ben Meredith.
I've had Haley on here. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Haley's great. We're good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if she talked about it, but we're good friends. We had a really good time when we were
Oh
out in New
yeah.
Mexico shooting with Deb. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, you know what? You don't have to give anything away, but I've been bugging Debbie Sue on this. I
Mhm.
said, look, I know who the 13 fanboy is. I said, you guys are going to pull a scream. It's one of those two dogs that looks so innocent sitting on your lap. I'm not fooled.
Yeah, it's tough to get the dogs in the costume. I'll tell you that much.
I said,
I mean, but they pull it off. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just two dogs in a costume, and so now we've ruined it, and Deb's gonna kill me.
yep. I'm like, I'm not fooled. I know it's those dogs.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, like, it's when Deb kind of presented first kind of presented the idea, it was really kind of cool. And it was fun because I got pulled on because of Never Hike Alone and the guerrilla shooting aspect of it, and kind of going over and helping and consulting with Deb, working behind the scenes with her, helping her with like stunts, and kind of being not a stunt coordinator, but sort of like a liaison to get her into the right, when she ended up bringing Kane on, and CJ and other people who had done stunts before. It was just about kind of setting her up to know the expectations. And then really, I mean, it was the producer, Joel, who
I've
sort
had
of took
him on
on.
in January.
Yeah. And so
Joel Paul Reisig, yeah.
yeah, he did a lot of work with the stunt people, and so we were kind of there. I was there as like the liaison to sort of talk to, like, how are stunts going to do it, how's camera going to cover it, and then just be as there was like a second kind of backup for Deb to be like, hey, if we're gonna if you're gonna cover this kill, here's a couple angles that you can work from. I was working a lot with Nora Hewitt when she was on, doing the special effects, and that's how I met Nora for doing Never Hike in the Snow. She ended up taking over for Kelsey Burke because Kelsey Burke is off working on amazing projects all over the world. And so it was really cool to I mean, for me, it was a really great experience because I got to go down there and kind of flex my production skills, work with a lot of great people, meet a lot of new great people, work with all the actors, and kind of liaison with them. So it was a lot of work. I did some of the stunt work too, which was a lot of fun. So I got to go in there and get beat up a little bit, double for some people. Um, but yeah, so and then it's going to come down to like who is it?
Did
It's
you?
fun. I actually got a couple bit parts in the movie. It's a little fun. You might see me in a convention scene. I'm like a guy in a line, and then there's a little scene that I did like a thing with. So you'll see if I can kind of sneak in that way too. I kind of have like a background kind of character thing, which is a lot of fun. I got to flex my acting skills a little bit, so it was cool.
So was one of the stunts you did giving Kane a wedgie?
Yeah. Yeah, if I wanted to die and get tossed off the balcony that night.
I also got this too. I got the T-shirt, but
Mm.
I brought
I didn't.
this
I don't
to.
even got that stuff. I got to talk to Deb.
Well, yeah, I got this. It was one of the things you order or something, but um, that's funny because when I wore I brought this to Horrorama in Toronto. I've done 3 of those, and I'm sad Tom Matthews had to leave the project because
Mhm.
outside Kane Hodder, he got the most attention on my shirt.
Oh yeah, I know Tom. It
Yeah.
was yeah. I was sad. I was talking to Tom about it. Yeah, I mean, for Tom, I just it was just came to the thing where like when they actually were able to shoot and when they could get shooting, it was just it. I don't think it ended up working out, and that's how it happened for a couple of people. I know that there were a few other people dangling on the line, and it really came down to when could all these people be available at the same time. Really the people coming in and out. I mean, Lar Park Lincoln came in and then she shot some stuff and she went away. Judy was there, Tracy was there, Ron, Kane, CJ, they were all in and out. Oh, that's cool.
Uh,
That looks like Kane.
That's Ted White.
Oh, that's Ted White. Wow,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
Yeah, I've had him on here a couple times. He's my favorite Jason.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and yeah, he sent this to me. And speaking of Corey Feldman, he talked a little bit about this.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Scaring him through the window.
Yeah. Yeah, so you and Ted White are my 2 Jasons I've had on the show. And yes,
Well,
I
cool.
consider you a canon Jason.
All right, if you want to.
Well, you know what? It's funny because I've interviewed Sean Clark earlier this year, and
Hmm.
he was not into fan films, but he finally got convinced to watch Never Hike Alone, and he liked it.
Wow. So
Yeah.
maybe I should talk to him about some of these convention appearances because we have some stuff that's going to be coming up that's original, which is really
Well, you
cool.
know
And
what? I think so. I can give you his contact info. I can
all
send
right,
you an
if
email.
he's cool with
Yeah,
that, yeah, I'd love to reach out and
because
do that.
because I've been I've had people like I set him up with Nancy McLaughlin because
Hmm.
Nancy wanted to get back into the convention scene, and so
You know who else wants to get back in the convention scene is Vinny Guastafaro. He's been looking to get back out there, and I know that he hasn't been out there for a while, and he is, I mean, for like getting to know Vin, he's a great guy. He's so colorful and animated and full of energy. He would kill it on the con circuit. I mean, you would fans would get a great experience getting to meet Vinny because he is such a ball, like he's so much energy and he's got so much going on. And he's always quipping with people, and he really plays into the character and really kind of enjoys the legacy that Friday the 13th has kind of left behind for him. So he's one of those alumni that's really appreciative for what the series has done, for his career, because he went on and he acted in a ton of other things. He was on Law and Order, he was on all these different things doing bit parts here and there. But at the end of the day, everybody comes up to him and goes, "Oh, you bang," you know what I mean? And they always remember that. I've never had that experience for any other thing that I've ever done, and I've done a lot of stuff. And so it's kind of cool for that. And I think, to a certain degree, no matter where I go in my career, hopefully that, like, I'll always kind of have like a toe in the pond, you know what I mean? Like a toe in the lake, just kind of be like, you know what, I'm not official, but hey, for a while when we had dark times and there were no Friday the 13th and there was a lawsuit and the game got stopped and all these other, and the movie got canceled, like, we were there and we filled that space as best we could, and it inspired a lot of other people to step up and now take their shot at it. We've continued telling the story, which is pretty cool. And it's kind of started this little movement of fans just doing it themselves, doing stories that they always wanted to see, or like taking whatever resources they have available and kind of running with it and coming up with their own crazy stories. So it's been a pretty cool little span. I think like the fans have sort of taken back Friday the 13th at this point. Even with Deb, with 13th Fanboy, she's got a lot of the old heads back together. I'm stealing that from Nora. That's her that's her term that she always says. And yeah, and bringing them together for that project, and we're working with Tom and Vinny on our projects. There's other alumni involved with other projects out there, so you're seeing the alumni, these people that you can go and meet, who worked on stuff 25, 30 years ago when they worked for Friday the 13th. But now these fan films and some of these fan adjacent projects are giving our alumni an ability to come back and kind of continue on and give fans something new to watch. When I first did Never Hike Alone, one of the things that got us into the Telluride Horror Show was fatigue. The fatigue of that we've all seen every Friday the 13th a million times. If we're going to celebrate Friday the 13th, it might be worth taking a risk on this fan film because it's something new and we think it's good enough that people will be entertained maybe as much as like coming in and watching Friday the 13th for the 10,000th time. So it was kind of like, for us, this kind of cool, that's really kind of the coolest thing. The Telluride Horror Show kind of said, like, listen, like, we can either play Friday the 13th or we can play Never Hike Alone, and we'd rather play Never Hike Alone because we think fans want something fresh. They're all dying for something new. And that's really where this fan film boom comes from, is that we're all dying for new material. Before the lawsuit, the studios were still in a 7-8 year drought of not being able to come up with something, and still kind of fumbling the ball towards like the goal line once they actually had something. And all because of the way that they exchanged the rights and the way they developed the projects and the kind of turmoil at Paramount and not having the backing to kind of really say, like, this is the project we want to do. We want to get it out to the theaters. There was no real push to kind of do that. Blumhouse shifted the market from horror films being able to, have a budget of $20 million and go out and try to make their money. The game shifted. I mean, horror movies are now being made for $2.5–5 million, and they want you to fall into that spectrum. So these films that they were planning weren't that. And so studios were saying that, like, horror is not worth the risk at $20 million. I'd rather to take that 20 and make 4 Conjurings. You know what I mean? So you kind of saw a shift at that point. That's why The Ring, that kind of came out and failed, was sort of the death nail of the $20 million horror film.
That made no sense to me, because The Ring and Friday the 13th are two very different properties.
It's very true. And to Friday the 13th's, credit, it would have at least fared better on the back end.
I think so.
Even if it wasn't great, it still would have attached itself to the franchise. It would have found its fan base. It would have either fractured another part of the fan base, a new pizza, or maybe it would have united more of us. And I think that the nice thing about Never Hike Alone was that I noticed that it was one of the first films, even in all the Friday films that have come out in the last 30 years, I'd say since Jason Lives, that united fans in a really great way. And I was really taken back by that, because I thought that was great that fans were coming together. But with the Paramount stuff, as they were coming to the end of their deal, And I don't know if, and just to kind of review this for people, if people don't know it, because I pay attention to this and I know it's not common knowledge. Paramount sold New Line Friday the 13th in 1993. That's when Jason Goes to Hell came out. That's the New Line series. In 2008, I believe it was Warner Brothers and New Line sold, not sold, but gave the rights back to Paramount to make a new Friday the 13th for Platinum Dunes, because Platinum Dunes was going after the right and they were associated with Paramount, in exchange for releasing Interstellar through getting the distribution rights to Interstellar through WB. And so Interstellar ended up coming out through WB. That was obviously the big, massive hit. And Friday the 13th went into Paramount's hands. And so they made the 2009 remake. It came out, it did okay. It didn't blow box office things. It wasn't a complete dud. And then it did well on home video, like most Fridays do. But it didn't have that push for a second film. And so what happened was that lease that Paramount was given on their own property that they originally owned, which is really confusing, was 10 years. So when 2018 came up and they hadn't produced anything and they were coming up into 2017, they realized that, hit or no hit, if they created a Friday the 13th that released on October 17th in 2017, by 2018, Warner Brothers would own that franchise and capitalize on whatever new films would be coming out. Either Paramount was going to have to re-up their contract, or Warner Brothers was basically going to run away with the thing that they created. And they said it's not worth the effort, and they canceled it. And part of it was rings, but mostly because they realized that, like, you know what, we're not going to reinvest in Friday the 13th. We have no one here who wants to develop Friday the 13th. Like, whatever Platinum Dunes is doing, like, we're not really invested in what they're doing, so we're not going to see it through. And so that's when it was shifting back to Warner Brothers. And within that shift back to Warner Brothers, that's when the lawsuit hit. But in between all of that, Never Hike Alone came out of nowhere in 2017 on the day that the film was supposed to come out, the big film. And we sort of took people by surprise. And we've been this slowly kind of growing snowball of fans, which, we started off with like 35,000 views. We're up to 2.5 million views. And our daily views consistently sort of tick up. Like, we were maybe getting a couple hundred views a day after our original release. We're averaging about 2.5 to 3,000 views a day, which to me is like really crazy, because it's 3-4 years later. You know what I mean? Like, that was 2017, or in 2021. It's still the most popular thing on our channel. Even with the new stuff that we've released, like, people still go back and they want to watch Never Hike Alone. There's something
you need to tell Sean Clark this.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely have that conversation. I'm sure he knows about it, because I know he knows, Ryan Turk, and Ryan Turk has kind of backed us as well. And I've talked to Ryan about it, and we had a really good conversation just about film and Never Hike Alone and making it, and Friday the 13th. And so, I mean, I think people kind of know who I am, but because most of what I've done that's been known is in the fan film world, I think people are waiting sort of for me to cross over into the original universe to have something to kind of balance it out. And so that's sort of been my focus over the last couple of years, while developing Never Hike Alone, is also developing original content, both as a producer, acting and stuff, consulting on a lot of things, but also kind of getting some of my other productions off the ground. I have a feature that I'm attached to, and then I've been working on an animated short that I want to get out by next year, which I'm really excited about, called Ghost Chicken. That it's going to be a different side of Womp Stomp Films. It takes place, like, with my animation background, with COVID kind of mucking everything up for live action sets. We figured this would be a nice exercise to work on while everyone else is paying COVID officers. We can put that into our film animation style and try to figure out how to make a nice, 15 to 20 minute film for a decent price. Maybe we have to go to crowdfunding, maybe, XYZ, wherever we got to go. At the end of the day, I think that, we end up create something original that people will talk about and share. And that might help us also elevate to that, level where we can hit the con circuit with a little bit more true authority, rather than just being fan filmmakers.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and a lot of people will agree on this, this is better than a lot of the Friday the 13th films, as far as I'm concerned. I've got the box set over there. I think this is one of the best.
Thank you.
It's certainly scarier than Jason X.
Oh, Jason X has its moments, and I think Jason X gave us our most fantastic moments, and I really do appreciate that people like consider Never Hike Alone canon. I know there are fans out there who also don't like Never Hike Alone, but no matter how the majority feels, like I feel very adamant about this. Like it's a fan film. Like I'm going to adhere to those rules. You know what I mean? I pay respect to the fact that there are people who are paid and professionally and who have put blood, sweat, and tears into this franchise. And I don't want to capitalize off of their work in a sense that like I just want to step in as a fan filmmaker and use that to my advantage. I just see it as like I don't know how I got here, but I'm just happy to be here. I'm never going to charge anyone for my autograph for something for Never Hike Alone, because I feel like that's for the fans. It's a free movie. Anybody can
Mhm.
get it on YouTube. I'll happily jump through the hoops to get people physical media and posters and T-shirts. But at the end of the day, like I'm just trying to break even. I'm just trying to make sure that if somebody wants something, the production costs are all paid off and they get what they want, and that the film can get made, and that I'm not going to be living on the street because I'm trying to make fan films. Um, so it really like it's this really kind of weird nebulous place to be, because in the true sense of like the industry, I'm still a bit of an outsider, because people want to see what I can do with an original story, and that's fine and that's fair. And I agree. It's like I want to work on original stories. You know what I mean? Like my idea was that I was going to make a bunch of original stories, and then maybe they'd hire me for Friday the 13th one day. And it just so happened that I flipped my career on its
I
head.
think I
Yeah.
think they should hire you to do a Friday the 13th.
Well, I mean, I think that job is going to land in the lap of someone like an Adam Wingard, or if David Bruckner comes back to the project. I think it's such a high, it, they really are going to be selective with that director, I think. And I think they're going to look for somebody who has a ton of experience, who has a big pedigree, who has credit after credit after credit under the list. And I'm trying to pack up credits, but I'm still working my way through the independent circuit.
But look
I
at
got to.
Freddy versus Jason. Like Ronnie Yu may had a lot of experience, but when I hear that he only saw the original Elm Street and the original Friday the 13th, I see a guy who should not have been part of that project.
I agree.
Especially considering you might as well watched an episode of My Little Pony for all you got, or the original Friday the 13th regarding Jason.
Yes,
You
and
know,
I agree with that. But like, what I would say is that when Paramount goes, or when New Line and Warner Brothers now step out to go find their director, if they hire me, holy crap, thank you. But no matter who they hire, as a fan speaking for this franchise, go find somebody who's as passionate as me, who's up that ladder, because they're up there. You know what I mean? There's other people like me at a higher level in this game who would do a fantastic job. Just don't hire the wrong people.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Hire somebody who gets the franchise, but also gets the fans. What I have lobbied for is that I think I'm the perfect candidate to work on a streaming series, something that is on HBO Max, or something that's, even if they want to go to YouTube or they want to go to Netflix, wherever they want to go with it. I'm really all about thinking that like my style, where I'm at in my career, the comfortable, like I'm perfectly fine handling a set of any size. But for them to take that risk on me, it might be easier to put me in one of 8 directors rather than the one director who does everything. But I would love to showrun and do a Friday the 13th streaming series, which would actually be an anthology series with each episode having a different story about Jason, which is sort of what we're doing in this fan film world. If you took the fan film model where you have 8 different projects, all about different styles of Jason, all about different timelines and different theories, and any wackadoo thing that you can come up with, as long as it sort of fits into a shape that matches Friday the 13th, you make it with 8 different directors. But you don't do it the fan film style with, sorry to say, but like the lack of resources, the lack of funding, and even sort of like with really green crews, is that you go out and you find other directors at my level, somebody or who are above, somebody who are up and coming, and you distribute it out so you get 8 different unique visions. And so what we do is we replicate that VHS model, which is when you went to the VHS store on Friday night, when you went to Blockbuster or Silver Screen Video, or wherever it was for you, and you went into the aisle, you had 8 movies to choose from, or you had 9 or 10 or 11. You know what I mean? through that age. And it was always like, which one do I want to watch this week? And one of those films for all of us was the one we rented most often than not, whether it's part 6 or part 4 or part 2 or the original or Jason X. You know what I mean? We all have the one that we just rented a little bit more. And so in this span of 8 episodes, you're going to have the episode that a lot of fans watch a little bit more than the others, but they're going to watch all 8. But because they got that one that they can always turn to, being like, these are all great, but this one hits the nail on the head for what I love, you kind of give Friday the 13th some breathing room to try new things rather than being really worried about, like, how do we relaunch this franchise without losing the fans and getting new fans and blah, blah, blah. It's all that stuff. It's like, let a movie go out, be its own thing, like Child's Play. You know, just like they did with the new Chucky. Like, let Chucky go be a robot doll on the big screen, and let the Chucky that we grew up with live on the Sci-Fi Channel and continue his story. And you get the best of both worlds, and fans are going to eat up both. You know, it's just because one pie's, you know, peach and the other one's cobbler, like, they're both going to be tasty. So you might prefer one over the other, but we're going to eat both. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we're not going to support it. You look at what's going on in the Marvel universe and DC universe. We have multiple multiverses now of, like, a Batman with, with Ben Affleck. And then we have the new one with, who is it? I always forget his name.
Uh,
For some
Robert
reason,
Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson. You got that one. Guess what? There might be 2 separate Batman projects, one on HBO Max and one in the theater. We're going to watch them both. There's also animated Batmans that I watch consistently, and Mortal Kombat. So Mortal Kombat comes out. There's also Scorpion's Revenge that came out a couple years ago. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. These are 2 properties under New Line and Warner Brothers that both fit the model of Batman in the comic world. Freddy Krueger and Jason are the Batman and Superman of 80s horror. There's no reason why they can't cross-platform into everything that we do. The fact that they're not being utilized more often is a crime against the horror community, because this is our Dracula, this is our Frankenstein, and those monsters were trying to be rebooted as well, and they're going at a different pace, like Lee Winnell doing The Invisible Man, and he's going to do more. He's doing Wolfman next, and bringing back all these different, like, old monsters. And I think that could happen again. And there was we sort of did that in the late 2000s with, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Platinum Dunes doing all their remakes, but that model fell apart. And what we got out of it really didn't launch either a Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Both franchises failed to launch, and they did not make either of those films thinking we only want to make one of them. You know what I mean? And fans didn't want them to make one thinking they are only going to make one of them. So going forward, I think it behooves all the studios involved to sit down and look and say, okay, where's our Avengers arc? How are these things crossing over? Maybe there's a new version of Freddy versus Jason we can build to, since we have both of these guys and we can cross-pollinate these worlds. Maybe there's a better way to set up Jason Voorhees. Maybe there's a better way to set up Freddy Krueger. Maybe we can build this as, 3 parts, almost like they did the Monsterverse, but please write better dialogue. So kind of do that. Then you get your streaming series where you can do more stuff. And then you can do even animated tales. So both these characters being at New Line and Warner Brothers, with Warner Brothers Animation being right in the same building, I don't understand why these entities all can't get together and create. Well, I know why they can't. It's because of a lawsuit. But, Nightmare on Elm Street's sort of coming out of it, and it can sell its rights to somebody. It's just about somebody agreeing to do it. But they just need to get there's plenty of horror people out there who are completely capable of running these shows. And lots of great people who love horror. I mean, I just did a weekend on American Horror Story. So I kind of got to look behind the scenes of that show and the culture behind it and the people who work on it and that type of stuff. So, like, the industry is there and they will fill these positions. It's just a matter of making sure that the content is being created and pushed, unlike through the 2000s and 20 teens, where nobody was really passionate about making Friday the 13th. Nobody was passionate about doing another Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, they failed so hard that nobody wanted to take that risk. And as we know how executives are in Hollywood, no one wants to bet on a risk. Everybody wants a sure thing. They want to know before the movie, the script even gets written, that it's going to be $1 billion hit. You know what I mean? That's the type of guarantees they're trying to work in all the time. And that's why everything's so micromanaged and falls apart. And that's why it takes so long for projects to get made.
Hmm.
But you put somebody, you plug in somebody who's passionate about either of those two franchises, and we'll see something come out like that. And I think that that would be the best thing for fans ever.
So what Friday the 13th film on a Friday night did you rent the most?
It was always Jason Lives. It was
I
Jason
think that's the
Lives.
best one. That one in the final chapter.
I also used to rent Manhattan a lot.
I
Manhattan
wish
used to get
I
like
wish that they would remake that. If they want to reboot something, why not make the version that we were promised?
see now in my streaming series, that's one of the episodes.
Yeah. By the
It's
way, we
Jason waking up in the sewer
yeah
and continuing that story. You know what I
we
mean? How
just
Jason escapes New York. I mean, who doesn't want to watch that episode? You know what I mean?
we just lost Peter Mark Richmond too. He was my favorite part of Jason Takes Manhattan. I've had him on the show twice.
Mm,
Wonderful guy.
yeah.
Yeah. To me, he makes that film, in my opinion. Every scene he's in, he steals his moments. So
Well, I mean, he's an accomplished actor, and I
yeah,
think it's nothing to buck against Friday the 13th cast, but it's kind of amazing to see some of the people that have come out of Friday the 13th. But as far as like casting goes, like him, Terry from Part 7 too is another standout. Is like they got good actors to lead their films. Tom Matthews is a great lead.
I like Tom. Yeah.
David Kagan and Vinny working together as the two cops, they were great leads in that film. So it's every Friday that does well usually hangs in the balance of at least one or two characters that can carry the film. And I think that we found success with Never Hike Alone in that, because Kyle became so likable that's really, people enjoyed their time with him, and then they wanted to root for him and they had fun with the fights. But in the meantime, he did a great job of entertaining people before Jason even shows up on the screen.
So I've had Victor Miller on here 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Nice guy. I've never
He is.
spoken to Sean S. Cunningham before.
Mm-hmm.
I still resent the fact that they killed a live snake on the set of the original film. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
hurt my watching that film a little bit. But nonetheless, this lawsuit, what can you say about that? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's fickle. You know what I mean? Like it's a very fickle situation where what it's ultimately, no matter what, no matter how many judge rulings there are, it's going to come down to two guys getting in a room and hashing it out. And I think for the fans, it would be nice if they hurried up that process. Now, obviously, like there's nothing we can do about this latest lawsuit with the compounding factors of COVID slowing the case down, the judge who was preceding it and writing the ruling on it passing away, and that work having to be passed on to someone else. How do I see Friday the 13th? Who owns it? Who does what? Well, Sean, to his credit, he was the producer. He was the director. He's the one who came up with the idea. He's the one who put the ad in Variety. He's the one who found the money. He's the one who made it happen. He couldn't have done it without Victor. He did hire Victor as work for hire. I think everybody who's ever watched a Friday the 13th behind the scenes knows about that. And we also know that everybody who worked on Friday the 13th did not think that there was going to be a part 2. And even when there was a part 2, nobody was really clamoring to get work on it. And I know Victor wasn't offered work on it, but I think he probably would have turned it down. And then I think now he'd say, oh, no, I wouldn't have turned it down. But at the time, I think everybody was like, get me away from this project. It was nice that it made money, but get me out of here. I wish
What was Sean's involvement with part 2? I know Susan Cunningham was an editor, but I hear various things about
I mean,
Sean
for
and
the
part
most
2.
part, I believe that at that point, part 2 was taken over producing wise by the Mancusos.
Okay.
Frank Mancuso Sr., I believe, did 2 through 4 or 5, and then Frank Jr. took over at some point. And Sean had handed basically the whole thing off to Steve Miner. So the whole concept of who Jason became was not Sean or Victor. It was Steve. Steve's the one who came up with Jason as we know him today. He's the one who came up with Sackhead Jason. He's the one who allowed his department to support him and put the hockey mask on him and make the final decision that the hockey mask would become Jason's mask in part 3, that became the iconic thing that carried the series with. And when I talk to people about Friday the 13th, the thing that unites us all, the one thing that we all will spot from across the room, is not a baghead, is not Pamela, is not young little plankton Jason. It's the hockey mask. You see a hockey mask. Friday the 13th sees a hockey mask from anywhere. Their head snaps to it and they find it. And they go, oh, what's that? And they go look at it. You know what I mean? I've seen it happen with Never Hike Alone. When I put the hockey mask on stuff, people turn their heads, and I know it on. And I've talked to my friends who are independent filmmakers, and we kind of joke about it because we're all lined up with our DVDs and our Blu-rays with all the stuff that we're kind of getting, and I'm just trying to sell a limited amount. But the minute people walk down the aisle with all of our projects, all their choices, the minute they see a hockey mask, they look at it and they walk over to us, and so it has that power. And it's something that I kind of understood as a fan because I was drawn to it, but as someone who's now made something that's related to it, I see how it affects other people. And that's been a real kind of lesson to me about how this franchise kind of operates, how the fandom operates, and sort of stepping back from some of my kind of hardened positions on how I felt about other films, and kind of like realizing, like, wait a second, there's room for everybody. And, there's a lot of great stories to kind of delve into, and there's a lot of fan bases within the fan base itself that could use some love and could use some projects that are made for them. So yeah, and so that's kind of like really been a big lesson as far as that. So bringing it back to the lawsuit, like Friday the 13th, when you really think about it, yeah, Sean was Sean got the whole ball rolling. Without Sean getting the ball rolling, he absolutely deserves whatever he's been getting for it. He doesn't love Friday the 13th like the rest of us do, and I think he has trouble understanding why it's so popular. Same thing with Victor. I don't think Victor is really kind of like, yeah, Friday the 13th. I think he's happy that like it's done well, and he really does love those characters. I can't say as a franchise after part 1 that he's really like in love with where the franchise went. I'm sure he has some thoughts now about like, oh, well, now that I could have an opportunity to go back and change it, like now here's my opportunity. Here's what I think. I think Victor Miller earned a lifetime salary from Friday the 13th. And if he wasn't getting one, then that was a crime. Even as a friend of him, Sean Cunningham should have been like, yo, man, like, here's a taste. Like, that's how I was taught to do business. And I know that's not good business practices, but you're supposed to take care of the people around you.
Yeah.
And, I always think about like, if Never Hike Alone takes off, or if I got a thing, like the first thing I'm doing is grabbing as many of my people and we're gonna all ascend together. And it's like, well, I got the job, so now we're gonna go up and we're gonna make this movie. And so, that's my goal. Or turn around for the people that invested in it. And if I can make that money back and say, hey, you invested in me, here's your investment back. You know what I mean? Like, it paid off.
Has
Like,
Sean seen?
what's
That's
that?
good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just gotta say, did Sean see Never Hike Alone?
I don't think so. I've met him multiple times. He's a nice guy. He probably meets a million fans. He's probably seen a million fan films. He's not really concerned with fan films. He's not even really so much concerned with Friday the 13th as a story-driven entity. It's really just his property. You know what I mean? And he is protecting his property. He's protecting the way that he's done business. He's protecting his assets. And I understand that. And I understand how much Friday the 13th like took from him in a way. All the sacrifice that he made to get that movie made, all the risk that he took to get it made. He was the one out there shooting it. He was the one producing it. He was casting it. He was getting it distributed, like all that stuff. And the reward paid off for him. And he gathered all those people. He paid all those people. It wasn't like everybody worked for free. Everybody got paid, and it's just kind of like, oh, now that it's successful, well, now we all want a piece. But I think in Victor's case, being the person who created Pamela, being the person who created Jason, who gave him the setting, who gave him the foundation in which Sean could build Friday the 13th, just a title with no plot and just the direction of let's rip off Halloween. Get like, hey, you know what? Let's settle this lawsuit. Help Victor out. Victor's not even in it for himself. He's in it so when he passes away, there's a little bit of a trickle that's going into his family and something that he
Yeah.
can leave behind for them. I think that that's noble. I think even if Victor, like even if Sean showed up with his work for hire paperwork saying, look, I found it. Victor was work for hire. This doesn't apply. Cancel the lawsuit. Let's go make a Friday the 13th. He should still turn around and say, Victor, maybe I've been short-sighted about this. Why don't we work a deal out for you? Why don't we get you connected with some of the stuff for the Friday the 13th? Let's get a stream going towards you. Let's get you residuals. I don't know if he's getting residuals or getting enough residuals, but I don't know if I honestly don't know if I mean the ownership aspect of it, I guess that's another thing too, but I think that he's at least earned a piece. You know, in the court of public opinion, you know, their legality, you know what? If Sean can't show up with the work for hire paperwork, you know, Victor's going to press that button to get the money that he probably should be owed, and they're going to have to work something out. And like I said, at the end of the day, it comes down to two guys getting in a room, two adults, and saying, here's how we split it up. Here's how it works. Here's how the approvals work. Let's get movies made. Because guess what? The longer you're in a lawsuit, the less films are getting made, the less money you're making. You know, I'm sure Friday the 13th is fine as a 35, 40-year-old movie playing wherever and selling Blu-rays and stuff like that. But I imagine it's a lot more lucrative to release something new and make fresh cash off of that and then create a new revenue stream that they can all go on. That's going to be something that's built for this new age. So they're just really shooting themselves in the foot. The fan base is the one who's ultimately losing out at the end of it because we're not getting content. They're not getting any money anyway. So it's kind of just a wash for everybody. And that's how it created this fracture for fan films to bubble up to the surface and for fans to try a little bit harder, hit a little bit better production value, and walk away with, you know, films that could sort of stand up to the production values of the 1980s and early 1990s. I mean, shooting with those, I mean, they had, you know, amazing equipment then, but digital equipment can replicate that pretty easy, even on a low quality level. Like even $5,000, $2,500 DSLRs can give you a cinematic look if you know what you're doing and if you have the proper lighting and you put the, you know, the proper amount of work into what you're constructing.
I've interviewed Tom McLaughlin a couple times, and he said once this lawsuit is done, he said he's got a script all ready to go. He said he's going to. I know you did Never Hike in the Snow. He said he's got a movie ready to go, set in the snow. And he says,
Yeah.
yeah. And Tom is somebody I'd like to see do another one because I think Jason Lives is one of the better written entries.
Mm-hmm.
You
Oh,
know?
totally.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like I mean, I talked to Tom. I've met Tom was one of the first people to reach out whenever Hike Alone came out and congratulate me on doing a great job, and our crew. You know, I actually started going for like little breakfast dates with Tom. We'd every couple months we'd get together, we'd catch up, we'd talk about Friday the 13th. You know, I told him, you know, I talked to him about like Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in the Snow and where I wanted to go with Never Hike Alone 2. And he was developing his script. And it was funny because around the same time, like he announced that he was going to do Jason Never Dies. And I was announcing that I was doing Never Hike in the Snow. And so like he announced first and then I announced and everyone's like, oh, you're copying Tom. And I'm like, what are you talking about? First of all, we talk. So we're not ripping each other off. And two, Never Hike in the Snow has been in development for a year. I almost shot it last year. I have test footage and other stuff that predates all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like if you want me to whip that out, I'll show it to you.
You don't
But
have
it's
to prove anything to me. I believe you.
yeah,
And
no, I mean, but it's just when
yep.
people start saying that, I'm like, yeah, chill, all right.
Yeah.
And you know, and we're all working together. It's all that same thing. My story is a lot different than his story. You know, I showed it to him. I was like, hey, listen, like, why don't you take a look at this? Let me know if this is stepping on any toes. In fact, Jason Never Dies was the original title I had for Never Hike Alone 2. So, I mean, as a full movie, it was going to be Never Hike Alone 2, Jason Never Dies. And that's the end of the third segment that when we were going to do the episode, the episodics, that Jason Never Dies was supposed to be the last episode. And when he released that it was going to be Jason Never Dies, I didn't know about it. I was literally 2 weeks away from an announcement with posters that said Jason Never Dies. So I'm the one who had to turn around and come up with a new name for my third film, and change them. And I did. And I called it The Final Hike. And I was completely happy with that. I was like, oh, instead of, you know, Jason Never Dies, I'll just pay tribute to Final Chapter, The Final Hike. That'll be great. But things have kind of changed since then anyway. I have kind of a new mode of thinking about how we're going to attack doing the rest of this movie. just from my basics and my experience in Never Hike in the Snow and stuff like that, because I noticed that like I pitched everybody saying, hey, I'm going to do a web series. So they're going to be episodic. This is going to be the pilot episode. And everybody watched and they said, where's the rest of the story? And I'm like, pilot episode. It only goes up to a certain part. And then we tell the rest of the story in the next episode. And the idea was to go into that episode in the spring. Basically Never Hike in the Snow would be in post-production. We would release a nice trailer for it. We'd go into production on, Never Hike Again. And then try to like roll them out in a certain way, just kind of keep the ball rolling, and keep our productions kind of like hunkered down so we could do them in smaller bits. After doing Never Hike in the Snow, after seeing the fan reaction to Never Hike in the Snow, I kind of just said, you know what? If fans are saying that they want Never Hike Alone, but they want it as Never Hike in the Snow, they want the long feature with Never Hike in the Snow's budget. I mean, with Never Hike in the Snow's quality. Well, then we're just going to go for it all. Screw it. Let's not make Never Hike Alone 2, 3, 4. Let's just make Never Hike Alone 2 as it was originally written. And I've been kind of going back into the script and kind of scrubbing out how we were going to break up. Like there's kind of ways that we were going to transition into the different episodes. So now that it's going to transition as a film, I'm just taking things out. You know what I mean? I'm just taking certain pieces out, reconnecting pieces, coming up with new bits kind of based on Never Hike in the Snow. And so our plan is that we're going to release the Ghost Cut on Blu-ray. We're going to do it this summer after Never Hike in the Snow comes out. Never Hike in the Snow Blu-rays are being produced right now. I'm actually dealing
Yeah,
with.
I ordered one. I know that.
Yeah. So what I'm dealing with right now is they're in production, but I promised everybody clear cases. And with COVID, there's a plastic shortage. So all they have are the blue cases. And so they're scouring the country for me right now, looking for an alternate version of the case. And so I
I'm
have to
good
wait for
either
that.
way.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
But
good either way.
in my head, I'm like, you know what, people, like this is what I promised. This is what I
Hmm.
want. This is what I want to give the fans. I put in all this time and effort to look a specific way. Like it's going to look better on either a couple. There's a few choices that I could have. So I'm out there looking for at least one of them. And if I can get one of them, that's when we can kind of case them up and start them going. If they can't find it in a good enough time within like by the end of the week, they're going to have to go on blue cases. And that's just the way it's going to be. It's not the way I originally intended it, but this whole process hasn't been like,
No.
because of COVID, because of like all these other factors, it's just been like, this has been the biggest headache because we had no trouble before this. But now that we kind of figured out, we understand what we're up against. Now we're going to do the Ghost Cut this summer and release that as its own thing, do like another kind of updated behind the scenes with everybody, kind of talk about what our plans are for Never Hike Alone 2. So that's the thing. And that will be its own campaign. The idea is that we take the proceeds from that and we do an event this fall. So now that like the world will be vaccinated, we'll be opening back up. We're thinking about holding a big screening of the Ghost Cut, getting Tom out there, Vinny out there, doing like a little mini convention for Never Hike Alone in one kind of location. And we're talking with a location right now. So that way we can get everybody together. We can have a nice little event, and that will launch the crowdfunding for Never Hike Alone 2. So we'll take whatever proceeds we have left over from the Ghost Cut. We'll launch Never Hike Alone 2 campaign. If we make the money for the movie, we'll make the movie. And if we don't, then we have a backup plan. But the way we're going about it is we're not going to do like a partial funding, because the last thing we want to do is go into a project underfunded and walk away with something that's not finished, walk away with something that won't be safe or complete. We want to give fans the end of the story. I mean, everybody's waiting for the ending. So if we can't get the ending out that way, we'll find a different way to do it. We'll find ulterior motives or alternative ways to get this story out there. But ultimately, like, we're taking our swing, and this is the year. We're going to crowdfund all this year. Hopefully get that money, get back on the set in spring of 2022, shoot the movie, release for fall of 2022, do a post-production campaign that summer, because I'm sure there will be additional costs that we'll want to cover. There'll be VFX and things like that are going to be really expensive. Kind of expand it out, just like we did last time with the final call. We'll do a final call for Never Hike Alone 2 if people want to get their names in the credits. We want to do that. And our strategy with this one is a little different. We want to tell people that we want to go after the feature. Last time we did Never Hike in the Snow, we got up to 2,500 backers. When we did Never Hike Alone, we had 277. So we're on the upswing and we're feeling pretty good about it. What we want to do is get that 2,500 people to go get another person and double our efforts. Get 5,000 people, 7,000 people, 10,000 people to back Never Hike Alone. And if everybody pays the price of admission to a movie at 10,000 people, that will pay for the film. It's pretty simple. I don't want anybody to have to give me $50,000. I'll take $50,000, but I'd rather have 10,000 people give me $20. And then they're all investors in this movie. And then we make it and they all get Blu-rays and they all get something to keep sake of it. And they get to say that they were a part of it. And it's something that before this lawsuit closes and a new movie comes out, this may be our last chance to see Never Hike Alone completed. And we really got to rally the fan base. And I think after it being out for 4 years and people having a chance to look at it, and 2.5 million people have watched it or rewatched it, that I think, have we earned our right to go and give this a shot? Do you want to keep watching one single episodes, or do fans want to go out and give us $250,000 or more to make a feature film in like 10 or 12 days, which is going to be really hard and tough. But as we've shown, our crews kick ass. We have some of the best people at our level in the independent system that have the ability to create cinema. We're not making, it's a fan film, but it can line. I'll line up our films against anything else on the independent market right now, and I'll take my lumps when I'm not matching up. But I'll say what, like, we'll at least run with them for a while, and we're working with a lot less. So we're happy to go out and take like this big shot. We think that our team has proven itself, and everyone's really hungry to get back out there. I mean, my crew texts me all the time, like, "Hey, what's the plan? What are we doing? Like, how are we going to do this? I got to finish this movie." Like, Tom's really excited about it. Vinny's excited about it. Kyle, Andrew's excited about coming back. I mean, he's the one who's been on me the most. He's like, "Come on, when are we doing it? When are we shooting it?" And I'm like, "Well, Kyle's not really in Never Hike in the Snow." And he's like, "Ah, come on." Like, so we did some stuff with him on the side, which was fun, but we're ready. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I didn't intend to work on this for 5 years, but if this is so be it, let me finish it. Like, I've done all this work. I put in all this effort, all this blood, sweat, and tears. I've taken a lot of risks. I'd really like a chance to step up and kind of show people where this story is going, because it's not just a frivolous kind of, oh, well, this is just another thing that kind of about Jason. It's sort of like, Noah, if I have the reins of Friday the 13th part 1 through 8 and I had my own way to end this series, this is how it should have ended. Not through Jason Goes to Hell, not with Jason X, not with the events of Freddy versus Jason, and not how 2009 did it, and not how part 8 had him flush down a toilet basically in New York. That let's tell a sort of a story that connects back one to Tommy, because since he's really the, he is kind of like the core enemy of Jason, and or as long as we're following Tommy's story, let's get a true blue like finality with that. Let's see their story at the core end of what their story is going to be, and something that fans can walk away of and feel closure for Tommy, closure for Jason, closure for Camp Crystal Lake, closure for all the characters that we've introduced, and sort of a closure for this franchise that, like, no matter what happens in the future, maybe this is the one that people can go and watch and say, like, that Jason I grew up with, the one that was in part 2 and like grew all the way up through part 8, this is how he went out. Like, this is how this story was ended. This is how they broke the curse. And
I was always disappointed that Paramount ended on Jason Takes Manhattan.
yes,
I'm
exactly.
like,
Me too.
yeah, I'm like, continue on, And I like Jason Goes to Hell, but because I'm involved in Hearts of Darkness, the making of the Final Friday. But if Paramount had the rights back, why not make an alternate Friday the 13th Part 9?
We need like Halloween 2018 for Friday the 13th, but Halloween 18 that branches off either at part 6 or part 9. I mean, at part 8. And we chose to do part 8 because we wanted to stay true to the Paramount Jason. And so what we're trying to do is saying that Never Hike Alone is the extension of the Paramount Jason. And this is the Jason that got washed out to sea and clawed his way back to Crystal Lake and licked his wounds and has been hiding in Crystal Lake for 20 something years. And Tommy's been searching for him for 20 something years, and Jason's been evading him. And what Jason is trying to do, and what Jason is trying to learn his lesson, he's an evolved Jason. He's regressed all the way back to part 2 Jason, which the Jason who was the hermit, who lived deep in the woods, who stayed away from people, who avoided contact and only acted when the line was crossed. And so that's how our Jason operates. And that's the Jason we've been trying to set up with Disappear, with Never Hike Alone, with Never Hike in the Snow. It's these characters cross a line that they're not aware of. And only when, in Disappear, it's really Jason kind of going through his routine. But it's like the start of Jason realizing, like, what am I doing this for? Why am I putting myself at risk? I got to clean the bodies up. I got to stay hidden. And every time I put myself out there, I put my mother and our existence at risk, because I keep getting pulled away from her. And all I want to do is be reunited with her. So maybe the best thing isn't to go chase people. Maybe I should just protect. And so Jason becomes a protector. And so in the films that we've been making, in every essence, Jason is protecting himself. In Never Hike in the Snow and Never Hike Alone, Kyle discovered the head. He was in the room. He knows that somebody was up there. He's going to bring back authorities, because who's not going to bring back authorities for a severed head? I got to act. He steps in and he tries to kill Kyle. In Never Hike in the Snow, he's keeping an eye on Mark, but accidentally gets himself caught on camera. He can't let that happen. He doesn't want to kill a kid, but he's got to, because what happens if that picture gets out? Now he's fucked. So now he has to go and he acts, and it creates this close call that, oh my God, okay, I killed this kid. People are looking for him. Tommy's pissed off. He's looking for me. If they find me, I got to do something about it. Unfortunately for Tommy in Never Hike in the Snow, because it's a prequel, the police cut him off before he can get Jason, when it would have been a really good time for Tommy to walk up and walk in on Jason. And unfortunately, he switched roles with Deputy Alan Mabry, and Mabry steps into situations that he's not prepared for, because the seniority isn't sharing information. And so we tried to replicate a lot of things from real life in this, to feel like, how could this situation get out of control? How could Jason survive for all these years? Well, if a police chief doesn't share information with his officers and they walk beyond a place that they don't know is there, and Jason's put in a position where he's being arrested, how is he going to react like that? I mean, it's these situations that, like, you can see how Jason is being put at risk. And so what's nice in the next episode is that we pick up with what happens. Like, how does Jason now get away with this? Because we saw how he does it in Disappear. We see how he did it in Never Hike in the Snow. He killed Mark. People came looking for him. They killed the people that were looking for him. And then when people come looking for them, what happens then? And so that's kind of the next step of the story. It's like, okay, now what happens when, like, something really, for the first time in kind of 20 years, that something really, like, unbelievable has happened, like something really mysterious and sketchy has happened, and people come to look and find blame, but they don't find anything. So how do you explain it? You know what I mean? Like, you got Tommy saying Jason, but if Rick can't find evidence, how can he prove that it was Jason? He can't even find the bodies. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the story kind of leads. And so it's still this mystery of, like, what's going on. And what changes everything is Never Hike Alone. The events of Never Hike Alone, of Kyle MacLeod going into Camp Crystal Lake, surviving a night with Jason, and then coming out with Jason pursuing him, because he's got Jason on camera, because he knows Jason's exists, and he can point people to where Jason is. He's a liability. And so now Jason, after all these years, has realized that the cat is out of the bag. Tommy showed up. Tommy's seen him. Kyle's seen him. They're going back to town. Well, if they're going to take me out, I'm going to take out as many people as I can with me. And I'm going to kill that kid for ruining all of this. And maybe going on a bit of a suicide mission. Maybe this will be the final way they bring me down. But whoever is, like, if one of us is going to be standing at the end of this. And it's like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of nice to have Jason back in pissed off mode, back in slasher mode. And that's why Never Hike Alone 2 is more of a traditional Friday the 13th than Never Hike Alone. But Never Hike Alone 2 is a story motivated Friday the 13th, which is something that very rarely happens. And the last time it really happened was part 6, because that story, that continuation of Tommy, about him being called back to Jason's grave to dig him up, to destroy the body, where was that call coming from? Why was he still feeling that? Is that PTSD, or is that the curse itself? Is that the true curse? Is that you'll just keep coming back and you can't help yourself? Jason is cursed and you can't let it go. And that's Tommy's story, is that he's lived in Crystal Lake for all these years, and he hasn't been able to prove Jason exists. He's completely convinced that Jason exists, and the few times that Jason has showed up, he's missed him. And so he's really frustrated by that because he can't prove it, even though he knows it's true. And all these years later, who is he? Is he becoming Crazy Ralph? Is he going to like lose his position at work because he can't stay out of trouble? Or is he going to keep his mouth shut and he's just going to toe the line and just go to the fact that he may never see Jason again and he may never ever prove it? But the events in Never Hike Alone change that. So that's what's really cool about Tommy's story, is that when we pick up with him in Never Hike Alone 2, he's this character that's finally, after 25 years, getting what he's been asking for. But now this plan that he's been sitting on for 25 years, now is it still going to work? Is this actually the way that we can destroy Jason now that we know where he is and what he is and all of these different pieces of information? But for Tommy, he needs Kyle. He needs Kyle with his information, so they need to work together. And in the middle of all of this is Diana Campbell. Is Anna Campbell's character, Diana Hill, the mother of Mark Hill, who's the doctor at the hospital, who's going to have to work on Kyle to keep him alive, who's still looking for answers about her son who went missing 3 months ago, who was assured by the police that they would have answers and has received nothing. So now she's stuck in this town and she's wondering, do I really need to stay here? But if I leave, am I leaving my son behind? But if I'm staying, am I torturing myself? I moved out here to keep my son safe and he ended up like going missing on me. Like, what's going on? I need answers. So she gets kind of pulled up into this thing and she gets pulled into the story. We obviously have Rick with his agenda, trying to keep everything under wraps and trying to really focus on who he thinks the killer is, because he's never seen Jason. And he was locked in the jail cell by Tommy. He was now, all he knows is that, Garris was broken in half. His other 2 friends were murdered and he was stuck in the jail cell. So he's never seen Jason and he knows that Megan would cover for Tommy. So maybe it still is Tommy. Or maybe if there was a Jason, he's long gone, but Tommy's so hell-bent on proving that he exists, is how far will he go to prove that he exists? And when
And he,
bodies start showing up around town, who is Rick going to blame? A fictional character, a ghost that he's never seen, or the true blue person who has been in a mental asylum and gives him the most shit? So you have all these factors kind of like working towards each other and colliding, and that's what I think makes it such a great story, because these characters in this moment, in this night, this continuation of Never Hike Alone, all have to kind of come to terms with their place in this story and go out and do their best to put an end to the curse before it gets them.
any chance of bringing Megan back, or is Jennifer Cook just not going to do it?
No, Jennifer Cook is long gone from the Friday the 13th franchise. She has no interest in acting. She definitely doesn't have any interest in Friday the 13th. She has moved on from it all. She definitely, I believe she found some religion. So I think that now Friday the 13th bucks up against that. Obviously, we did have a storyline when I was talking when I was first pitching to Tom the concept of Never Hike Alone 2. Megan was a part of that storyline. And there was a whole thing with like he and Megan had a daughter and they were separated, and the daughter was coming to Crystal Lake because she was fighting with the mother, and they were going to have to watch the stepdaughter. So we were going to be like, we'll make it easy for her. So all she has to do is sort of like do some phone acting and maybe she'll show up at the end. And Tom was like, yeah, she's never going to do that. So I said, okay, I'll just change that plot. And so like we ended up changing some things around, and ultimately the person who ended up kind of taking over a mantle of an important character was that Diana Hill. So at first, Never Hike Alone 2 kind of had this doctor or nurse that was like just got kind of caught up in it and not really like an essential player. And when we were developing Never Hike in the Snow, I realized like, what if that character was the person who's related to this character in this film? And at first it was supposed to be a husband and wife, and it was supposed to be people who had lived there for a while. And then it shifted to like, well, what if she's new? And what if that's not a husband? What if that's a son? And what if this story mirrors Friday the 13th in the sense of a single mother living with her son, trying to do the best she can, working at the small town hospital, trying to keep him safe, assured that this is a safe town. And then he goes missing and she's never given answers. Where will she be meant? I thought that would be a great way to lead in and have this character have power. So it's not just like characters that show up out of nowhere that have no drive, but you have Kyle, who obviously has his own backstory that we've seen. We have Tommy that has his own backstory. But when Diana steps into the ring, she has her own backstory. And that makes her more of a powerful character. And I think that part 4, part 6, part 2, the best cast that we've had in the films, in part 1 as well, in part 3, um, it's it's really kind of like indicative of how I want to construct this film. It's built around a really great cast of characters who all have something to do and all have a stake in the game beyond just surviving. There's emotional stakes, and that's what drives the characters at their core. And at the, even Jason has emotional stakes. We set those up in Never Hike in the Snow, like him and what he's protecting. What does Jason do when no one's around and he's in that room with that head? He fantasizes about his mother being there still. And
And
it sort of peels away that one-dimensional layer of Jason, which makes it more complicated, which I think how the fans see it anyway.
any possibility of bringing Trish Jarvis, aka Kimberly Beck, back into the fold?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's opportunities. I think for the Never Hike Alone story, this storyline, it's better to just kind of keep it simple. And the characters have been figured out, the roles have been figured out. There's ways for them to kind of be kind of mixed in a certain way. But my feeling is that what separates Tommy from his sister, from the Ginnies of the world, I think Chris Higgins is still in an insane asylum somewhere. Um, Rennie, I'm sure, kind of did her own thing. Who knows what happened to Tina? And, some of the other characters along the way. I feel like Tommy's the one who took it the hardest. He's the one who lost his mother. He's the one who, killed Jason, had the reoccurring dreams, was pulled back in. He's the only one who never left. And I think that that's what separates him. And I think like having him the only one who left, because the way everybody else defeated the curse was to get away. And it was something that he couldn't do. It was so much more stronger in him, and it had such a tighter grip on him because he felt responsibility. Like the meme says, it's like every death in Friday the 13th past part 6 is due to this guy right here, and it's Tommy. And Tommy has been sort of fighting to make up for that and trying to pay his penance. And so what does he do? He doesn't move away. He lives in town that he grew up in, and he tries to make amends, and he thinks that he's the town's protector, but he's not.
Well, Tina brought him back to life. I mean, you can't. Not all the blame could go on Tommy.
I know, but if Tommy had never pulled him out of the grave, then
Yeah.
Tina would have never had the opportunity. And if the police would have actually drugged the lake and actually took Jason out, then he wouldn't have been down there when Tina came along. There's lots of weird, fun plot holes that we can have. But at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter that Tina did it, because he still feels the responsibility. Even if a million people tell him, hey, it's not your fault, Tina did it. And then, hey, it wasn't your fault. It was those kids because they were dragging their anchor and they went by Crystal Lake. You know what I mean? It's a lot of people's fault. It's the police's fault. It's the town's fault. The blame could be spread to a lot of places, but Tommy's the one who actually acknowledges it. You know what I mean? He's the one who is taking the responsibility. And what the problem with that is that it's not his job. It's Rick's job, or it's supposed to be Rick's job. But Tommy looks at Rick and goes, you're not doing your job, man. Like, you're playing it the safe way. Rick's thing is, hey, let's make it a wild preserve. Hey, let's build a fence. Hey, let's just tell people to stay out. And if they go in, not my problem. I'm legally covered, And it's like, and if we tell people not to go in there and they go in there, it's on them. But I'm not going to go in there and do one of two things. One, I'm not going to lead an FBI raid like Jason goes down. Imagine if Rick led that raid that happened at the beginning of the FBI raid, and Jason Goes to Hell. Imagine they go through all those steps and they storm the castle and they get there and there's no Jason. Rick's not going to be sheriff much longer. So he's not going to take that risk. Okay, what if there is a Jason and we go in there and he kills us and he gets out and he starts killing more people? I don't want to poke the bear. So why don't we just enclose the bear, take a little bit of that Springwood thing? It's like, let's not talk about it. Let's not have anybody know what it is. If you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. And nobody will want to go up there. People aren't spreading the story. People aren't going to get curious. It's just going to be a plot of land. It's just going to be a wildlife preserve. People aren't going to want to go up there and mess with trees and birds and whatever other thing is living up there, which there's really nothing living up there. But just to keep people out. And as long as he can keep that balance and he can keep people out, if he can play defender, then he thinks he's going to succeed. And Tommy is like, we got to get in there and do something before something happens. And Tommy is all offense. So Tommy's best defense is offense. You know what I mean? So you have two people with opposing views who are butting heads ultimately at the beginning of this story. And the worst case scenario happens. Somebody goes in, gets out, and pulls the monster out with it. And it's neither of them, and they don't have any control over it. And so
You,
Tommy ends up kind of being right. And it's not spoiling anything because we know that Kyle's going to go in there. But when Never Hike Alone 2 picks up, it's not like we're starting in the ambulance. We're not driving down the road with Tommy and Kyle saying, okay, we're just picking up where we left off and yada, yada, with no backstory for Tommy. It starts with Tommy's day. It starts with Tommy's day in the life, about like how he started that day, the things that he's still dealing with, the things that Rick's still dealing with, the things that Diana's still dealing with. And then in the middle of getting to know where these three people are, 3 months later, a phone call comes in from the Forest Service that says, hey, we got an injured hiker out here who's unconscious in a ditch. You need to send an ambulance out to pick him up. And we all know where this is going. And so we see the events play out with Tom showing up and how they found, Kyle, who was the one who found him, what happens and why does Jason attack them when he does, what happens outside of the van, and then what happens afterwards. So really our first act of the film is sort of a recap in a Back to the Future 2 kind of way. We're going to see a bunch of stuff that didn't happen, but then we're going to see some stuff that did happen more from Tommy's perspective than anything. It's going to become Tommy's movie, and we're going to tell Tommy's story. So when Tommy gets pulled out, we're then going to show his side of what happened outside of the van, what happened when he fought Jason. So there's going to be a fight sequence between Tommy and Jason out there. We're going to see what happens to Axel when Axel has to come in and try to save Tommy. And we're going to see how Tommy got back into the car. We're going to see, and then from there, we get to tell the rest of the story, which is like the final hour of the film, which basically, if people have looked at our posters, consists of them returning to Crystal Lake, going to the hospital where Tommy works, trying to get Kyle healed from his injuries, and basically that being almost like a Halloween 2 in a way, where Jason is working his way through town towards the hospital because he knows that's where they're going. He's like, where else are they gonna go? You know what I mean? Like they gotta go, they gotta heal themselves, and that's probably the best place where they're gonna go. If it not Haddonfield, but if it says Wessex County, medical center on it, that's where Jason's going to go. And Jason walked his ass out of there at one point, so he knows the route. You know what I mean? So he's returning to that, and whoever he bumps into along the way is going to die. And in the meantime, like, all the alarm bells are going to be rung. Rick's going to be out looking for a murderer, and it's going to be kind of this eye of the storm that's kind of collecting all around this hospital where most of our movie is going to take place as far as the middle of it. And then there's going to be a lot of catastrophe there, a lot of fighting, a lot of killing. And the end of the movie is sort of a return to camp. And so the survivors of this event are going to have to return to the camp and sort of kind of execute the final part of the plan. Now that the information has been shared, now that the people are ready to go kind of perform this task, they're going to return, and they're all going to meet back at Crystal Lake. And it's going to end up being one big final fight sequence of the survivors trying to do their best to rid the world of Jason and the curse and everything, and Jason fighting back as hard as he can. And a lot of VFX and stunts and fights and wire pulls and injuries and intense emotional moments, and a resolution that kind of lets people know that this was our ending. This is how we think it could end, in a way that everyone would think it's satisfying. But even though it's a nice definitive ending, who knows if we don't leave a door open or two? You know what I mean? Like, to say, like, you know what, like, here's a good place to leave off. And if someone can pick up from here and tell an interesting story, be my guest, but good luck.
You told in your previous interview how you got Tom Matthews involved, and I love that story that he saw footage that you'd already shot, and that's a really major compliment to you that he was like, wow, yeah, I want to be part of this. Talk about getting Vinny Gastafaro involved.
That was much easier. So it was through Tom. Tom had I had talked to Tom, and he said, what do you think about, is there room for Rick to come back? And I was like, hell yeah. I was like, that's on my list of things to do. It's like, one of the people that would come back would be Rick, because he's the surviving deputy who became sheriff. And so he was like, oh, I know Vinny. I was like, hook me up. let's talk. And so I met Vinny for breakfast, and we sat there for maybe 4 hours. I pitched him all of Never Hike Alone. It was a little bit different than it is now. I've kind of changed some things since then, based on talking to Vinny and things like that. But he loved the idea. He saw what we were doing. He trusts Tom. And what I got in return out of it was, Vinny invited me to come to his acting class. And so I got 2 years of shadowing Vinny in his acting class as a, just kind of shadowing the class as a director, watching the actors perform their scenes, listen to the direction that Vinny was giving them, seeing how they prepared, sort of seeing how they chose their blocking. And I would think about like sort of like how I would set, it was good tool sharpening for me. And I got to know Vinny very well by doing the process. I also got to know his wife, Cynthia, who is also in Friday the 13th Part 6, who plays the woman who gets engaged in the park and then skewered on the motorcycle. She's also in our original film Pathosis. She plays Nancy, the mother of Andrew and Luciana's character in that film, which is pretty cool. So we've been able to work with her. We'll probably pull her into probably Never Hike Alone too. She did a voiceover for the Ghost Cut for us. She's one of the newscasters. So that's really cool for her. And so after that, Vinny and I just became friends, and he was like really excited about doing Never Hike in the Snow. He had a great time out there. He wants to get back on the circuit because he wants to promote himself, but he wants to promote Never Hike in the Snow. They want to promote Pathosis. And so it's been really, really cool. It was a different experience because it was more like, it's kind of like the way that we built our team, which is like, hey, I got a friend who wants to come out. Like, are they allowed? I'm like, yeah, they're allowed. Bring them out. And so it was really like that. It wasn't like a huge, I didn't have to go out there with like, be like, hey, fan films and blah, blah, blah. It was really about like, hey, Tom gave you the pass. Like, what do you see my role? Am I going to be useful? And when I explained to him how, like, I'm like, no, you're a main thread in this. And he was like, I'm in. He's like, if you're putting me to use, then I'm in. And like Never Hike in the Snow really became his kind of coming out party to like reintroduce us to the character, the new Rick. You know what I mean? Like, cause he, like when we were going through the process, he was like, Rick was kind of a wise ass and all this stuff. And he's really kind of like tempered here. And I'm like, Rick, you're the sheriff now. You're old. You have kids. Like, are you going to be are we the same dickheads we were when we were in our early 20s that we are in our 40s and our 30s? Like, we learn and we change. It's not that Rick's not that. It's just that the only time I want to see Rick like that is when he's around Tommy, because everyone else he's around, he's measured, and he's got to pick his words carefully because he's got a sweet gig. He's got a good paycheck in a town where nothing happens. And he literally maybe writes 2 parking tickets or a speeding ticket a year and probably doesn't even do much of the work himself. His only pain in the ass is Tommy. And so he focuses most of his time on just how can he get Tommy thrown in jail. Every opportunity he gets to throw him in jail, he'll take it. And, Tommy's got to be careful with the steps that he takes. And at the end of Never Hike in the Snow, he is arrested under suspicion, thinking that like, we're going to nail you to this now. But with Tommy in custody and another person going missing, that now eliminates Tommy as a suspect. So Rick kind of shoots himself in the foot with this one. And all he can charge him with is trespassing. And that's a fine. So Tommy will pay his fine. He's not going to go to court, and he's going to go back to work. You know what I mean? And the story's going to continue. So it was really cool to see like Rick try to like control the situation until Tommy broke it. And so he became Rick at the end. He's pissed off. He's yelling at him out there. He's yelling at his deputy. He's creating a scene. And ultimately their division, the fact that Tommy and Rick can't work together for the greater good of that town, leaves this opening for Alan Mabry to be underinformed and undermanned and underpowered to deal with something that he doesn't understand. And ultimately, Alan Mabry's death is on the shoulders of Rick and Tommy, because if it wasn't for Tommy, Alan would have never asked a question. And if Rick gave him the answer, he may have never gone searching. So I think when people kind of say like, there's no story in Never Hike in the Snow, or they say like, it doesn't blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, all of the things play out in this episode. Everything that we set up pay off. There's nothing left unhanging other than what happens next. And what happens next is the next episode. It's like, you're not going to go into a series, season of Dexter and have Dexter killed the main serial killer in episode 1. He's going to have to go through highs and lows. And after a lot of episodes, you almost feel like he's screwed. How does he get out of this? Well, tune in next week. You know what I mean? And that's sort of the spirit we had with it. But I think us being so, the popularity of what we did is not followed like other movies, and people aren't really informed with the way that we're trying to do things. So when we shifted to an episode format, which is the reason why we did that, was because that's what fan films are supposed to do. That's what in the laws of, quote unquote, the laws that they said in the stipulations, like, we want you to do webisodes rather than movies. And so we said, okay, we'll try to do it that way, because it actually makes sense for us, because we can manage the budgets and it won't be that bad. Like, we can't raise more than $50,000 usually. So how are we going to make a feature film for $50,000 when we really only get $30,000 out of that to actually make the film? Then we made $100,000, and we showed that we had a little bit more reach. And I have a feeling that Never Hike in the Snow was a questionable investment for fans. I think they were like, where is this going? What is he trying to do? And some of them held back because they wanted to see what was going on. And I think if we came out with Never Hike Alone 2, there would probably be a little bit more excitement to realize, like, no, we're picking the story up now and doing that. And we're willing to take the risk to do it as a movie. If they want to come after me, they can come after me. We're going to take the risk of the fact that it's going to be a super high budget once we budget it all out, because we're in the middle of trying to break it down right now. And that this is going to be a big endeavor and a huge risk. And that we need to prepare ourselves. Like, I needed to get to work. Like, I need to be able to take time off of work. So that means I have to actually work for a steady clip, instead of like kind of the sparse jobs that I've been getting because of COVID, because, things have kind of been going, I can't really take a full-time job right now, because I'm anticipating that the Never Hike in the Snow Blu-rays are going to come in, and I have to be available to sit down and ship all those out and get all that there. Like, I'm sitting on this last little pile of cash for Never Hike in the Snow, hoping that by the end of it, there might be a little bit of a sliver left to like help with some of the ghost cut stuff, maybe pay for some stuff to happen for the ghost cut. And then us release that, which will become the first time since the first release of Never Hike Alone and the second edition of Never Hike Alone that we'll be making a campaign that will allow us to profit highly. And with that higher margin of profit from that, we can take that and turn it around into pre-production for Never Hike Alone 2, but also that screening, which we think would be nice, because that's one of the things we wanted. We never got a chance to do it with Never Hike in the Snow. We think that maybe if we combine Never Hike in the Snow, like, instead of just doing screenings for Never Hike in the Snow, let's just do the ghost cut. Let's do it in the fall as like another kind of anniversary thing. And that be the thing that launches us, into our Never Hike Alone 2 campaign, which should hopefully, at the end of the day, give us what we need to make the movie.
You know what? It's interesting because I know you're involved in Dylan's New Nightmare, because I listen to Dave McRae a lot. And I bring this up because Dave McRae has brought up something interesting. You mentioned web series. I love what Dave McRae has brought up in the past about going back and telling Pamela Voorhees' story. You know, you got Jason drowning, and I'm under the impression the people responsible for Jason drowning are the two that are killed at the beginning of the film in
Yeah.
1958. I'm gonna say they're the two responsible.
It would be, it would be a smart, storytelling wise, it would make sense. I would go as far to say this. This is my theory, and I guess if someone wants to steal it, then you'll steal it. I think it was that girl and Steve Christie. I think Steve Christie was a counselor back then. And I think Steve Christie, after that event, because his parents, in my head, I had this story that Steve Christie was like sort of in his senior year, and he was kind of doing that thing. And after this event, after a kid died and kind of put everything at risk, and they had to shut down the camp. Well, they didn't have to shut down the camp, but the big risk, they kind of got sent away to boarding school. So the next summer he wasn't back at camp, but she was, and she was sleeping with another boy. And so he got pulled into it. And then many years later, when Steve comes back, that he's kind of he's sort of the final piece that Pamela has to get.
I like how you're thinking. I never thought of that.
See how that, Yeah,
you
why
know?
not tie Steve to it? That makes the most sense in the
Well, you know
world.
what? Dave McRae has put a lot of stock in you, and I can see his point. And look at the stuff you could do with a Pamela backstory. You know,
We
you
have one.
got the fires in 1962.
Hmm.
You got the poisoned the water. You know,
Hmm.
and I don't know how Elias Voorhees would fit into this. You
I
know,
have it all. Look, trust me, I have a whole thing.
wow. And
And
here's the
it's
other thing too, and
mhm.
I hear a lot of people. I know there's somebody out there that wants to do a Sackhead Jason movie,
There's a
picking up
few.
after part two. But I'm like, why pick up after part two? You got 5 years in between Alice's death and part two.
You want
I
to hear a
would
cool
like,
story?
yeah.
So I have an idea. Like I had like so here's my idea.
Mm-hmm.
I try to base them off of. So when I come up with an idea for Friday the 13th, I look at the franchise as it exists.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the plot holes that exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I look for opportunities within those plot holes to help fill in some space, to
Mm-hmm.
create another story that the other films didn't have time to kind of, that they only glossed over and sort of didn't see. I think in Pamela's story, you would see sort of Pamela's history about what happened to her, how her life turned out the way it did, what happened to Elias along the way, why her and Jason were always on the move, what happened after Jason went, and then sort of this concept of like the bigger theory of what is Camp Crystal Lake? Is Camp Crystal Lake just a place, or is it a place that has sort of a Silent Hill, Derry, Maine, Salem's Lot sort of aura to it, where bad things just tend to happen, especially around this lake? People have been warned not to go out there, not to build out there, not to hunt out there, not to fish out there, because something sort of just does something to people. It either they have unfortunate accidents, people fight over things, like they become jealous of a piece of gold in a way. Like this land is so lucrative that people want to settle there, and then there's always fights about who's going to do that, and things boil up. That there's sort of this bubbling tension that was always there. And when Pamela and Jason come along, the the camp itself was sort of subdued. The land, it was subdued because the Christies had brought in so much warmth and happiness that the darkness really couldn't subside, that the kids weren't really off on their own. They weren't left, like people weren't depressed. People were having a great time. But by the time Jason comes along, there's a susceptible entity. There's somebody who's alone, who's sad, who is picked on, who is kicked out to the side, who is can be picked off as one of the herd, and that these sort of these series of events of bad luck, maybe kind of enhanced bad luck, ends up in his death, and the fact that he's never found, and the compounding bad luck and the compounding hatred and anger and loss that Pamela was filled with became sort of the birth of the curse. That what was driving her to kill two children, that what was driving her to set fires, that what was driving her to poison water, that what was driving her to return to a camp, kill six people, and then end up getting her head chopped off all over this revenge. It's like, what was fueling this revenge? Was she ever really this type of person to be this angry? There are events probably in her life that were compounding to this, but what was the flame? You know, what was the spark that lit the flame? And what was the gasoline that kept that flame going? And if it's a part of the curse that also sort of is responsible for bringing Jason, because in my head, Jason did drown. I follow Friday the 13th, part one. In that movie, he was dead.
I got to bring something up
Go ahead.
because Adam Marcus really tried to tie this all together too when he made Jason Goes to Hell.
Mm,
He said the reason the book of the, by the way, that was the
I
actual
know.
Book of the Dead Sam Raimi had
I was
presented
told
it
it
to him.
was it's one of the Book of the Dead. It's not the one from the original film though. It's one
I
of
don't,
the.
I don't know, but I mean, you got the Book of the Dead and Jason Goes to Hell. And even the Creep Show crate is in
Yeah.
there, but it would make sense on how he made to find Alice
Mhm.
or how he'd babe to come back to life all this
Well,
time.
in my head, I think that like what I didn't want to do, and I
Hmm.
like Adam, and we're really good friends, and we've talked about this. That's not my. I don't see Pamela as someone who would seek out the Necronomicon. I don't see it as Pamela as someone who can even get her hands on the Necronomicon if it
Hmm.
existed in that world, but that the concept of Jason and Pamela loved each other so much,
Mm-hmm.
and they were bonded so much that when Jason did die, his soul didn't pass on. Kind of working in the world of the Revenant,
Okay.
that a soul can't, if it feels like it's got unfinished business, it can't pass on. And so Jason was in limbo, and part of Jason being in limbo between worlds, he accidentally haunted his own mother into a paranoia schizophrenic, where she was out killing people because he was calling to her. And when she died, something about the reuniting of their souls was interrupted, because Jason became so angry that Pamela was killed that as she passed on, he raced out of death to return to his body and come back from the dead. And so he took up a mantle of how a revenant is born, and he was born out of the same hatred and anger that his mother had, and there was something in her death that brought him back. And so he came back and sort of evolved into whatever it was that he was supposed to be. That's how, I mean, I don't know how he grew, but eventually whatever came back was something that was more powerful than what left. And it was part him, but part this anger, part this curse, part his mother, that all sort of got back into his body and created whatever that is. Sort of like Pumpkinhead in a way. Like when Pumpkinhead died, he was a tiny little person. And when he was resurrected through the power of becoming a revenant, he grew into this monstrous monster. And so I think that somewhat happened to Jason. So now Jason is surviving in the woods with his mother's head, trying to figure out how he got back, trying to bring her back, but trying to stay hidden, feeding off the land, kind of acting as if, okay, I'm back. I'm going to do things that humans do. And he humanized himself. In that span of 5 years, between, or in 3 months, okay, he is not quite fully grown. Alice returns to Camp Crystal Lake. And that's what she's talking about. And it's also in the book where it says, like, basically through the advice of a psychiatrist, that she would return to Crystal Lake to face her demons. And when her mother calls her, she's concerned that she's returned to this place where she was attacked and wants to make sure that she's okay. And that's where that conversation is heading. So Jason didn't get in a bus with a head and travel across the country to California to go kill Alice. He killed her in Crystal Lake,
Oh,
killed
I
her in an
believe that.
apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and killed her in an apartment. I mean, that's actually what it is. It's in the book, and that's actually the intention of what was there. No one ever said that I think people, because the information wasn't quite clear, people assumed that might have happened, but that's not how it plays out. In the actual story, that's what happened. He went after Alice, attacked her, got his revenge, and then receded back into the woods thinking, like, okay, I got the girl who killed my mom. Can I have my mom back yet? Okay, no, I'm still here. What do I do now? And so it really just became about protecting where he was. Then you have the story of Chris Higgins, because that was pre-part 2.
I
And
was going to bring that up. Yep.
so what I think this story could be is a bridge between Jason understanding that he is no longer human, which is actually established between 3 and 4 canonically right now, because in part 4, at the beginning of that movie, Joseph Zito has confirmed Jason is dead. And he is a reanimated corpse when he comes back in part 4. When he walks out of the morgue, he's a reanimated corpse, and which blew my mind, because we always, as fans, I think for a long time, many of us believed Jason was a human from part 2 to part 4, and he was somehow became supernatural in part 6. But so Joe saying that sort of like opened up the world to be like, okay, what are we really playing with here? How are you guys actually really seeing Jason? Is he a living blood human being, or is he a revenant? To fill in that information, you could tell a story between part 1 and 2 about Chris Higgins running into him that night, because there's a moment where Chris Higgins passes out and she wakes up in her own bed. So what are the events between Chris Higgins passing out and her ending up in her own bed that could be written in a way that serves the story of Friday the 13th without having to introduce, say, a Necronomicon to the deal, but
Okay.
work in things that we've already seen? We know that Jason has come back. If we show in that first episode with Pamela that Jason has returned, that Jason has risen from the bottom of the lake, and that's actually Jason at the end of part 1 pulling Alice down, and at the start of his transformation and all of this, that you can kind of show that evolution. And so now you're picking up in the next part of the evolution, which is, what is Jason? And so in the night where he is out and he gets seen by Chris Higgins, it's not a rape story. It's a story of, fuck, someone saw me. You know what I mean? I don't know what to do. I killed a girl who killed my mom, but do I kill her too? What do I do? So I just knock her out and I drag her back to the lair, or I drag her back to where I'm hiding. Say at this time he's not living in a shack. Maybe at this point he's still living at the camp because the camp is still shut down. Chris Higgins' parents are going to go out looking for her that night. A hunting party goes out looking for Chris Higgins that night, and they find Jason. And a fight ensues, and Jason is shot fatally. I mean, it would kill most people. Shot in the chest. Maybe he falls off from a high thing. Like a lot. Look, whatever happens to Jason, it's the first time that Jason realizes that he can't be killed, because whatever happens to him, he survives it. And the people that say he's shot off a cliff, whatever, it's the 20-foot drop. You know what I mean? They shoot him, they see him down there. You get a little bit of the Michael Myers action where it's like, whenever they go to reclaim his body and see what he was and who he was, he's gone. And you see Jason coming to grips that something's different about him. And in between, you get to part two, where by the time Ginny Field chops him like halfway through the heart, we understand that this is a being that's not quite going to be destroyed this way. That no matter what you do to this physical body, he's almost like a Terminator. That he's the living, tissue on the outside, but underneath it, he's a living, breathing death curse. That he's a T-800. It's just skeletal things making his body animate, but it's not the muscles, it's not the blood, it's not his blood pressure, it's not air that is animating his corpse. It's something supernatural. It's something that whatever powers are revenant, and in this point, it's hatred and anger and loss that's doing it, that this is the fuel that powers Jason through all these films. And when you layer that across the entire first 8 films of Friday the 13th, you see that type of logic is sort of the only logic in which the first 8 films can actually exist in. Because other than that, it's not really, because at that point you're jumping a shark in part 6. So you can only really say that the first 4 work if he survived in the woods. And the plot hole between him surviving in the woods and being a revenant is the fact that between 1957 and 1979, where was Jason and why did he not find his mother? Why would Jason choose to live in the woods if all he wants to be is with his mom, unless you create a contentious relationship between them, which would be not sort of the Friday the 13th that I want to see. I don't want to see, what was that movie with that just came out that was really good, with the mother who stole the baby and then raised it to think that it was sick and constantly like kept it from escape. I think it was called Run.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah, I don't see Pamela and Jason having a run relationship. I see
No.
Jason and Pamela having a real relationship, that it's real love. It's real, like Victor Miller said, he's like, Pamela Voorhees is the mother I always wanted. Someone who fought for me. You know what I mean? Didn't fight me, but fought for me. And I feel like Jason being ostracized, Pamela being ostracized, they were bonded by that. And Jason wanted to go out and make friends, but his mother knew that going out and making friends was going to be a risk. Pamela wanted to go out and have a relationship and actually have a life, but towing Jason along, it's going to be a little bit harder with a deformed child, with a child out of wedlock. When you had this kid probably sometime in like at the end of high school, how are you seen? You know what I mean? So there's lots of like really great emotional character things that could be given to these characters if you choose to explore them. And if you break them out into mini episodes like this
Mhm.
in an arc, you're talking about a series of films that could connect. Short films. I think the Pamela story only has to be a half hour long. I think this story about Jason getting killed for the first time after his resurrection only has to be a half hour long. These are little segments. Maybe there's some more segments about like stuff about like part 5. There's stuff about like remnants of what happens to Tina afterwards, what happens to Rennie afterwards, Jason when he goes to like, but also acknowledging that there's a multiverse. So when you have fans of Jason Goes to Hell, why don't you make sequels just for them? You wouldn't go to the theater with Jason Goes to Hell 2. That wouldn't be where you would put your $5 or $10 million. But for a streaming series, you do an episode. How does Jason escape from hell? Or how does show us a story of Jason in hell? What is Jason's hell? You know what I mean? Like that would be an interesting thing. Hand it back to Adam and say, hey, Adam, why don't you explore some things that you didn't get a chance to before? Go and look at Jason Part 8, Friday the 13th Part 8. What happens after Jason wakes up? We have a story for that in Never Hike. In fact, we have a connecting story in Never Hike Alone that connects Part 8 to the Never Hike Alone timeline. We kind of have like
I
the trailer
love
hitch.
that.
Yeah, the trailer hitch episode that is about sort of this wandering vagrant, which is inspired by the dude from part 5 of all movies, the guy who shovels shit for what's her face, who cleans up the chicken coop, and it's
Oh,
just like
Junior.
not Junior, the guy who
Oh, the
volunteers to work.
yes, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's
The
sort of like that guy meets John Rambo, about this like military vet who ends up in Crystal Lake. He's looking for a place to stay. No one wants to give him a place to stay. No one wants to give him work. He finally gets work on a farm, and he finds a place to stay at this little cabin on the side of the lake. Just so happens that that cabin is at Camp Crystal Lake, and it also just so remember in part 7 when the uh when the when the boat's kind of floating by, and like there's kind of like lights on at camp, and it's back to Camp Crystal Lake.
yes.
So it's kind of like he's living in one of those cabins, and he's kind of jacking some of the power from there and making a good little home for himself, a nice little free place that he can fix up. But it also happens to be during the same weekend of the events of Jason Takes Manhattan. So ticking in the
Okay.
background of the events of what's going on is we actually travel with sort of like, we don't see Jason, but we see his trail of destruction. So as he's staying at the camp, we're cutting to Jason at like a rest stop, at a manhole cover, at a highway thing, at another place, you know what I mean, at a convenience store. But every time you're doing that, these events are popping up and they're getting closer to Crystal Lake. So this guy who thinks that he's living the lap of luxury at this camp that's been abandoned, there's this ticking clock that's coming back. And when Jason comes back to camp, there is a very interesting way in which he and Jason interact, which we've never seen in Friday the 13th before. So it's sort of expanding upon our mythology of the camp having its own set of powers and its own set of influence on the people that are there. Like, again, like Silent Hill and Derry.
Hmm.
And we see in this movie the birth of Ghost Jason and how Ghost Jason came to be and where those things came from. And one of the Easter eggs that we have for this movie is in Never Hike in the Snow, when Deputy Mabry goes into that storage closet and finds the hockey masks. So that sort of is an addendum to part of that story.
It's interesting. You going back to Chris Higgins, you'll notice Jason looks the way he did in part 3,
Mm-hmm.
but that happened before part 2. Part 2, he would have had the overalls and the sack head and the hair. Are you going to explain around that?
No, it's just that's their fault. That's
Yeah.
their
Okay.
fault for
Okay.
continuity errors. You know what I mean? In fact, you
Yeah.
know what? I think I went back and I watched it, and I think they had him in the overalls. I remember always thinking that he didn't, and I went back and watched him. I'm like, I think he's in the overalls. They might have got that right. But
Hmm.
either way, yeah, I think they did. They may have or may have not screwed him up. But what he is bald. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
So he wasn't bald then either. So that's there's certain things about Friday the 13th that we can't fix because they're blatant continuity errors and somebody screwed up.
I kind of like it with the hair with part 2 there. I thought was pretty good.
I like bald. I'm a bald Jason
Yeah.
fan. I
I
kind
am
of
going to
like.
say this. So everybody wonders what happened to Paul Holt. My theory is in part 3, Abel has Paul Holt's eye in his hand
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I think
because
Paul's
he
dead.
says he found other parts, or were other parts of the body. You know, I believe Paul Holt, that was his eye. I think he
Was
was.
it them or was it the store owners? Because they were kind of like right outside. But you never know. Could be. I
I
kind of like that. I do think Paul Holt is dead though. I think
Yeah,
that was the
I
whole.
I think so. And also go back to Steve Christie, like you get a little bit between the little backstory between he and Alice. What kind of character do you think Steve Christie was?
I think in the original films he was just. I think in the original films he was just a guy trying to like. His family's plot was on its last leg. He had to get the camp going. He was trying to make money. He was sort of. He's seen by everybody in town as sort of like this Captain Ahab in a way. You know what I mean? Like he's just charging for Moby Dick to get this camp back open, but the camp's never going to open because he's got bad luck and it's got a curse. And there's not much motivation behind him other than that, just getting the camp open. And I think that there's something to explore with the Steve Christie character if you give him a little bit of the guilt, if you tie in his story with Jason, where he
Hmm.
was somehow responsible. The outcome of what happened to his family's camp, he is responsible for. Kind of like Tommy in a way. You know what I mean? Like Tommy feels responsible for the events. For a long time, Christy's been carrying around this guilt of like, man, it might have been my fault that this kid died. It's my fault that these two people got killed. It's my fault that the camp, fell apart. If it wasn't for me, then maybe everything would still be good. So I have to do everything that I have to do to make up for that. And I think that like if that was injected into the story, it kind of gives it a little bit more of this emotional kind of thing, because now there's if he saw Pamela, if he ever saw Jason, if any of those things ever happened, I feel like there's something else within him that he's trying to make up for something that he fucked up for in the past. And that's kind of the great thing about curses, is sometimes they're built on those things. It's like we curse ourselves in a way. And I just thought that thematically that would be a great way to freshen up that
Oh
storyline. I think if
yeah.
they remade Friday the 13th, that's an avenue that they should explore. That if they're going to remake it, they should start with Steve Christie. They should start with the people who were responsible for Jason's death, which they kind of did in 2017, but they changed all the characters and they changed who was responsible, and they changed the events so much that it wasn't even Friday the
You
13th
know what?
anymore.
How I look at the what they call the remake, I look at it like a sequel, because they even put, if they did the if Paramount were smart, they should have done the opening part as a flashback of the original when Pamela gets her head cut off. Insert the
Yeah.
whole thing with the locket or whatever, I don't know, but and have everything happen after be like a sequel, because I noticed this. And I don't know how many other people notice when he gets his hockey mask in the reboot. It's almost like a double take, like he recognizes it. Because then when he
Yeah.
goes back to the camp, what's he going to do? He's going to go back to Sackhead if he doesn't have his hockey mask.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have a lot of questions about the way that it was executed. I see a
I
lot of
agree.
ideas that are smart on paper. A lot of them are great. When you just put the
Hmm.
idea down on paper, it makes a lot of sense. The execution always seemed to be a little bit off. Like when they're doing the locket thing, you never see Pamela and her sort of side by side in a way that says like, wow, you two really look like each other.
I
It's
agree.
it's
Yeah.
sort of an offhanded like comment with that's not even really focused on. It's just kind of a throwaway line of like, oh, she kind of looks like you. Like that had to be kind of a moment,
Hmm.
where it's like, oh, that's weird. Like really kind of focusing on like, we need to draw attention that you look exactly like Pamela Voorhees. Like it has to be clear to everybody, because I think I either kind of caught it or I missed it, or I kind of felt like, oh, that was weak. Like,
Hmm.
oh, that was a cheat. There were certain things like the opening, like it didn't feel like it fixed anything. It actually kind of led more questions, because especially in the killer cut, because Jason comes out as a child again. So in my head, it was like, wait, that happened in 57. This is 79. Why is Jason still a child? If he's human and survived, like you screwed up that continuity again. There were other continuity things that they kind of like muffed, and it was really weird. There was like lots of things where I was like, listen, this is fine as like just a tongue-in-cheek Friday the 13th movie. A lot of the kills look good. Jason with the sack looks great. Not a big fan of the mask. I think it was too much of a cereal bowl on his face. And I had certain, like, I just had gripes with too many things. It was like, I want to like this, but you've done too many things that I don't like. Like that's not like the way he looks. That's not my taste. Like
Wouldn't he
the way the
be
film was. Yeah.
wouldn't he be a child in 79? I know it doesn't make any sense, but when he comes up and attacks Alice, he certainly does not look fully grown.
Yeah, so if you, like that's the complicated thing about Friday the 13th, is that there's sort of like this division there. You can
Yeah.
go either way. You can either say that part one, that was a dream. So she was just dreaming about the boy Jason, and it could have been like a projection. And
Hmm.
that wasn't Jason. And if Jason was really surviving out in the woods and he was so remote that he didn't know that his mother returned, that Jason would be an adult. And that's the Jason that shows up, a few months later in part two. Um, but where that Jason falls apart is As soon as Ginny puts a machete through his heart, and he gets back up, and in the next movie, he's walking around with an arm that should be hanging off his body.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not. He's perfectly fine walking around as if nothing ever happened to him. And that's not a human being. And so in film, we have something called entertainment logic and logic logic. So
Yeah.
logic is real world logic that we do. And entertainment logic is sort of this, we'll give it a pass. Yeah, of course, Vin Diesel's not going to be able to jump a car across the Grand Canyon, but in this sense, and with their super nitro, it works. And with Jason, I think for some fans, his ability to keep surviving is something that got glossed over by filmmakers saying, like, we're not going to explain it. He just gets up. Joe Zito's the first one to kind of say, like, well, he's undead at this point and he's coming back from the dead. Okay, so when did Jason start coming back from the dead, and where did he get this power all of a sudden? You know what I mean? Like, and how does it work in part 6? So it just starts to sort of unravel as you go. And I thought that Friday the 13th 2009 did that, and I think that that's a mistake that the original films made, was something that started to take away from their power, was the fact that, like, they gave Jason these brutal deaths, but they didn't kill him. He just keeps coming back. What's bringing him back? And sometimes like, yeah, in the 80s, it was cool to say, oh, don't think about it. And audiences were like, yeah, we're not going to think about it. Problem is, in 2021, that's not the audience anymore. The audience is like, you got to give me something. You're either going to give me like a supernatural like thing that's going to show me why he came back, or you're going to show me how this like logically works. Because say they have Jason as an adult at the beginning of the movie, they undo themselves at the end of the movie because they perform kills on Jason that would end the life of a human. So what they're saying is that Jason is superhuman, which if you did that, there's a lot of other things that come into question. So it's in Friday the 13th, you can't straddle the line. You got to pick one way and then be smart about how would a human Jason survive a Friday the 13th finale? You know what I mean? You got to construct a finale that leaves Jason with a Jason that's human that could survive it, if that's the way you go. If he's undead, then do whatever you want, but
Mm-hmm.
show that he's supernatural and play up the supernatural ability. Don't ride the line unless you're doing it in a way that like becomes a thing that's like a great reveal at the end that he is undead, which I think they did a really good job of in David Bruckner's script for Friday the 13th 3D that they were going to do in 2015. You have this Jason that's very grounded, very powerful, very hidden and mysterious. He's just a creature of the camp. They don't really do much backstory other than like the campfire legend. At some point in that script, they kill that Jason in a very brutal and like messed up way, in which like he is like completely eradicated almost. And that Jason gets back up, and we understand that this is a supernatural entity. And it's beyond our world. And so it pays it off in a great way. And I thought that that's where 2009 kind of haphazardly walked itself into Jason's kill at the end of the movie. Because if you think about the ends of the movies from parts 1 through 4, at least, let's just go from there, even 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say up until 7, the first 6 movies, the definitive Jason kill is memorable. It's, chopping Pamela's head off. It's Ginny doing the one swing with the machete and coming down and planting it all the way into his heart. It's Chris putting the axe in his head and him having that iconic coming towards camera. It's Tommy, putting the machete in his face. It's Roy falling on the spikes. It's Jason being pulled to the bottom of the lake, or being flushed out to sea, or being pulled down by a dad. Who knows? But they were definitive. 2009 had this really kind of wishy-washy ending where it was like, okay, like,
Yeah, I
first the
agree.
chain, now he's pulled back, now the stab, and it's all kind of just coming together, and now he just stops moving. And you're like, where was like the bam, bam, like iconic ending? That's what it was. It just felt like somebody who didn't pay attention to the original films kind of making a new film, like with Ronnie Yu saying, I think
Yeah.
Municipal was sort of in the same degree, where he had no interest in Friday the 13th. The Daniel Pearl, the DP of the movie, has been quoted as saying he thinks that the Friday the 13th franchise is a quote unquote piece of shit. So you have a dude who thinks Friday the 13th is a piece of shit and he can do a better job. And you have a guy who really didn't want to do a Friday the 13th in the first place, who's in charge of rebooting a new franchise. You want to know why we don't have a film in those 8 years? Because of that.
Yeah.
You have two writers who are obviously big fans. They came up with a really great concept for Freddy versus Jason. Ronnie Yu kicked fans in the balls by not having Kane play Jason.
Yeah, agree.
Made
Yeah.
Jason look like a dopey hobo. Then you had Marcus Nispel come in, who just tried to make Texas Chainsaw Massacre Friday the 13th. Um, and just kind of gloss over everything again, like, which
Hmm.
I think he got away with in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Maybe because I'm not a huge Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan and I didn't feel that, but as a Friday the 13th fan, I felt so glossed over as a fan, like I was treated like an idiot, that I was sort of like, I think you can do better. And it always stuck with me because I wanted to love that movie, and it's something that has stuck with me since, because that's the last movie that was made. That's the definitive sort of last mark of Friday the 13th right now, and it's the franchise is capable of so much better. It should have 3 movies that came out over this time. It should have had a new trilogy. I don't understand why it didn't, and I do understand because of the movie that was constructed and the fact that, like, what they were going to end up doing is creating another fractured franchise. It was going to be another story that was loosely hinged to the next one that didn't really make much sense and got away with a lot of cheats. And for the modern horror audience, they weren't really going to forgive it. I think that fans are looking for something a little bit better constructed these days. And the fans deserve it. Friday the 13th has shown itself that it is one of the predominant horror franchises in the world. It's been sitting on the sidelines while all these other horror icons that are like a quarter popular to that have been basking in the limelight, getting sequel after sequel. I mean, how many Saw films? I mean, Jigsaw's coming out with a new movie. You know what I mean? Like, Chucky's getting a series and a movie. They're doing a new Hellraiser. They're doing all these different things, and it's like, why isn't Friday the 13th part of this conversation? And why isn't Friday the 13th the first word out of people's mouths? And it's because nobody really knows what to do with it, because they were all falling on the same old formula that fell apart in the 80s. It's once Scream came along, that formula for the 80s horror died. Like, you just can't get away with it anymore. You can't get away with characters being complete idiots and carrying a movie for 90 minutes. They got to be smart. They got to
Hmm.
do things that we as characters, as we as people, would say, oh, I do this and I get out of this situation. Well, that character on screen should do that, and you should show all the ways that that idea is bad too. People should be smart, and it should still fail, because that's what's scary. It's not scary to watch an idiot get killed, because idiots get killed. That's Darwinism. What
Hmm.
we want to see is capable people going up against an unstoppable force and having even like things work. Like, that's what I love about Deputy Mabry's kill, is the fact that he has the upper hand, he has the weapon power, and he's a capable individual, and he still doesn't walk out of there alive. He doesn't even walk out of there with his own head. What are you going to do against this thing? Like, what would you do? You know what I mean? Like, okay, is that what you do? Well, let me show you how Jason would outsmart you, and to show you that Jason is a lot smarter than he looks, and that he's been kind of given credit for. Because if he's done all this stuff, he's got to have somewhat of a working brain in there. So it's sort of like this sort of, I don't know, that's my fan fulfillment of how I've always wanted to see Jason portrayed, how I've wanted to see victims portrayed. We've seen it successfully happen, because my 2 favorite characters are Jenny and Tommy. And those are the 2 of the smartest characters in the entire franchise.
You go
And
bring
I
Jenny
love that they
back.
have brains. Say that again.
You go bring Jenny back.
I would love to bring Jenny back. I don't
I
think she
l-
fits in Tommy's story.
I love
Um,
Amy Steele.
I love Amy Steele too. She melts my heart even to this day. And I got to
Yeah.
see a screening with her and Adrian King in Portland 2 years ago. And that was nice
Ad-
to see those 2 on stage and ask her a question. That was sort of like one of the highlights of my Friday the 13th fandom.
I
That's for
like
sure.
Adrian King too. In fact, Adrian sent me the script of the original.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've got this.
Is it like a photocopied version or?
He signed
Oh, that's so nice.
this, and it's the script. Forget what number it is. It says somewhere on there, but there was only so many. But yeah, the script for the original. There's a few differences in there, but like the
Yeah, there
opening
always
is.
is.
Yep. I always thought, well, Amy Steele, I think is beautiful, but I think Adrian King, I always thought she was stunning.
I mean, I don't think the Friday the 13th franchise is short of attractive actors. That's for sure.
Yeah, but one thing I wanted to bring up, and again, is there's a few characters in part one I need to bring up because of you mentioned your backstory there, your streaming thing, and one is Steve Christie, of course. There's obviously a big age difference between he and Alice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he was predatory, or do you think that he made
Yeah, I
her
got those
uncomfortable?
vibes. I got those vibes
Yeah.
from Steve. I definitely got Creeper in the first movie. In fact, Never Hike Alone, when Kyle finds that Playboy,
Mm-hmm.
that is Steve Christie's Playboy. Because we
Oh
got
wow.
those Creeper vibes for him. So we're like, oh, this is like the office. And so this is like his little like receipt box, but in the receipt box he hides a Playboy.
Oh,
Or
I
maybe he stuffed it
wow.
in there real quick, like when somebody came in, because he didn't want to know people was looking at it. So like we have this little kind of sly um line that Kyle mutters. You hear, if you listen really close in that scene, you hear Kyle go, "Dirty dog." Like he knew that someone was stashing a Playboy somewhere, and that person was Steve Christie.
Okay. Okay. And what about Officer Dorf or Crazy Ralph? You gonna do anything with them?
Well, Crazy Ralph's dead. Um,
Oh, that I
and
mean, going back like between part one and two.
I would love, I haven't done any in-depth thought about it, but I do
Hmm.
have on a note card written somewhere is, how did Crazy Ralph become Crazy Ralph?
I've wondered
And
that
how can we
too.
tie that in? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Was Crazy Ralph like a kid at camp with Jason? Was
I think he would have been
he
too old.
Woody?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess he would
because
have, because he was
yeah.
older than Pamela. He was about the same age as Pamela. So did Ralph work at the place? Was Ralph a witness of Jason's death and
Hmm.
silenced by other people and labeled as crazy when he knows the truth? And that's why he knows that like Crystal Lake is screwed, because those people are evil and they deserve to be cursed. You know what I mean? Like I try to look for things in
I love
characters
your
that,
thinking. I love
yeah,
your
that
thinking.
do that. So there's definitely that in there. Yeah, and then yeah, Steve's, the other question was Steve's a creeper. That's right.
Yeah, because you get the feeling that Alice is a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, you feel like there's some tension between them, like he's putting some pressure on her, or there was something happened one night after too many beers, and now they're kind of awkwardly dancing around it. Or it could be that we're misreading it, and ultimately what Steve is doing is saying, I really need help. Like I've had too many people bail on me, and I can't have you bail on me. But that's not the sense you got it. Like, there's definitely something in that, like, one, walking around in jean shorts and no shirt, like a weirdo. I guess they did that in the 80s. Who knows? And sort of this, like, this intimacy between them in that scene. That the, putting up the gutter, that scene where she's going to go back to California and he sees the drawing and stuff like that, that there's a lot, you can tell that there's just something between them. I think that would be, that's a great, did you ask Victor Miller that question?
I think so. I think so.
Do you remember his answer as far as like how he saw their relationship and what was the dynamic?
I would have to go back and listen. I've had him on here 3 times. The
Well,
last time I had him on, though, we were talking about his favorite comedies because he says to this day he wishes he had done Airplane over Friday the 13th, which
oh
I
yeah,
kind yep.
who doesn't?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. But actually, it's interesting. Somebody on Facebook said, I put that on Facebook and somebody said, yeah, well, Friday the 13th made more money. And I'm like, no, Airplane
I
was
don't,
in the top 5 grossing films of the year, and it was still being screened places for its 40th anniversary. I'm like, no, Airplane killed Friday the 13th at the box office.
I'm sure either, I'm sure they both did well. I mean, like, I love Airplane. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, I know people are passionate about their horror films, but be in context here. Airplane people, they say nobody's talking about Airplane. Yeah, people kind of are talking about Airplane, you know. But
Mhm.
nonetheless, yeah, I love your thoughts on Never Hike Alone. I do want to skirt back to 13 Fanboy and talk a bit about what you did in that, because I am so looking forward to 13 and I bet we're probably not going to get it here, but I really want to see it. I'm set to have at some point Riley C. Morris on the show,
Mhm.
and he's waiting for distribution information right now. But he said to me, and I felt so complimented by this. It tells me a lot about Debbie Sue Voorhees.
Mhm.
Um, you see, I got the perk where my picture is going to be in the movie.
Okay.
So, and I said to Debbie, I said, please put my picture in a scene with Tracy Savage, because I always had a big crush on Tracy Savage.
Okay.
And yeah, it's in a scene with Tracy. And
I'm trying to think of which
Riley
scene.
C. Morris said to me, he says, I recognize your face. He said, your picture's definitely in there. And then he added the real kicker. He said, it's covered in blood, but it's there. And I'm like, not only has Debbie Sue put my picture in a scene, but it's become part of the splatter part.
Okay. I'm gonna
I
have to think about, because I'm trying to think about which scenes were there. I know they were placing stuff. I wasn't paying attention to that stuff, so I got to kind of think about where. I wonder where it is. I'm gonna have to keep
well,
an eye out for
I
that.
know the perk you could have it in a scene with Tracy Savage or a scene with Ron Sloan,
Mm-hmm.
and I chose Tracy Savage because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and Debbie Sue has confirmed that's in a scene with Tracy Savage, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, but the fact that it's going to be splattered, like it's not just on the desk or on the wall or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's become part of the well, Nora Hewitt is a student of Tom Savini.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've been kind of knighted.
Right? Yeah, United in Blood. No, it's really nice. The fans, who had a chance to participate in this in the film, they got a really great opportunity. I mean, when I was on set, there were a lot of fans there. They got to be in some of the scenes. A lot of fans were in Tracy's scenes. Like she plays a teacher, which she actually is in real life. She actually
Hmm.
teaches today in California, and I believe in Ron's scene was probably the convention scene. So I met a lot of fans through both those scenes. There's some convention stuff in it. There's Tracy. It's what's nice is that there's sort of a mirrored real world there. It's almost like a Scream in a way, where these actors acknowledge who they are. They're playing themselves. Kane Hodder's playing Kane, CJ's playing CJ, Judy's playing Judy, Tracy's playing Tracy. Even Dee, to a certain extent, is playing herself. Um, and there's just an extension of relationships with some of the new characters, which is pretty cool.
I met
Um,
Dee at Horrorama
mhm.
2018. She was on my show in 2015, and she remembered me, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah,
She's very sweet.
yeah. But I'm very excited about this movie, and I've interviewed so many people from this film, and it's even people like Jason Bradford. I've had him on. I've had Chris Norris on, and I've had Chris Norris on a couple times actually,
Hmm.
and Troy Elke, for
And
example.
nobody spilled any beans, right?
No.
Good.
Well, I've already told people it's the two dogs.
Yeah, we're all in a pact with like
Yeah, it's those
we're all
two.
trusted with this information. I feel like I'm in a Marvel movie. I'm like,
I'll be frank, I don't know what's going on. I always
I'll tell you
joke
this:
with
I
Debbie.
didn't know who the killer was until I showed up to set because it kept changing. Like every time they'd be like, "Oh, it's this or it's that," and blah blah blah, and I'd be like, "Okay, cool." Like, all right, because I was trying to prepare for them, sort of. I was working with like Nora had a lot of cool stuff. Deb had a lot of cool kills in the film, and my whole thing was like, okay, how do we get people to execute it? How do we, make this look good? How do we make it look like Friday the 13th? You know what I mean? How do we
Well,
get
I
this,
know Chris
whoever's going to
Norris.
be this killer? Yeah. Chris Norris has a great death. I think Chris Norris has my favorite death in the whole movie. That was one of in fact, when I got out there, that was one of the first deaths that we worked on, that I was there for.
Hmm.
So there were a couple, I think, that they did before I got there, and then I got there, and we had a lot of fun with that. I'm trying to think of like all the deaths that we did, and a lot of them are good, but that one still stands out in my mind as the one that's like, holy crap, that's good. And we had a lot of fun building it. So it took a lot of hands to get that thing done. So it was a really good job by Nora, who was working basically single-handed on that movie.
I'm
So I think that's
picturing.
why it was good that I was there, because I could kind of be an extra set of hands for her. I could be an extra set of hands for stunts. It was really just kind of an all hands on deck, jack of all trades type deal for me down there.
I'm just kind of picturing in my head, like you got the stuff with Debbie Sue, and that's either, to me, and you don't have to confirm this, that's either going to be at the beginning of the film or a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm picturing the stuff with Tracy Savage.
Mm-hmm.
I know that in and around her, you got Chris Norris, you got Jason Bradford, and you got Dave Miller. And I know all three of them get picked off.
Yeah, I think they all pay to get killed in the movie. David's got a really great death, very cinematic. Jason's, I think Jason's death, I know what Jason did. I actually had an idea for Jason's death. I don't think they did it. Because I was there, but I wasn't on set for it, because I was working with another crew, and I was like dead.
You were given Kane a wedgie.
Yeah, I was out giving Kane. It might have been one of the days after the Kane stuff, because I had to step in and do some of the stunt doubling for that scene. So like anytime Fanboy kind of got like really roughed up, like I would do some of the stunt work. So it's me kind of like rolling around a little bit. And other than that, I'm kind of like helping them to get it to where it needs to be. So like that was a long night. We did a lot of work that night with Kane's stuff. Because obviously, like, they're not going to put Kane in the movie and put him up against the new killer and not have him be formidable. You know what I mean? So we had to make it look good, and make it feel
I
believable.
thought he hid behind Jennifer Bongo.
Yeah. Yeah, she uses her Tina powers, which, you know what? The biggest crime in the world is somebody not doing a New Blood movie and casting Laura as Tina and then casting Jennifer as her daughter.
Yeah, I think Lar Park Lincoln's hilarious.
She's great. She was very funny on set.
Yeah.
We had a good time. She has some really cool scenes. And I was running. Was I doing some cam? Was that when I doing cam up? I don't know. I was doing something with her on those scenes. So it was. We get to do some really cool stuff with her. She was great. She brought a lot of energy. She was there for a few days to kind of film her part in and out. It was really cool.
Yeah. Well, I'd hate to see Tracy Savage get killed off in the movie, but if my picture's gotta get splattered with blood, then I'll consider it an honor if it's Tracy's.
I'll give you this. Tracy's around for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy's around for a while. And she and Trey and she was amazing to work with. In fact, we became such good friends. She came back and did a special edition scene on the Ghost Cut where she plays a news anchor. So she was a news desk anchor in Los Angeles for a long time.
Yeah.
I want to say for over 20 years, 25 years she was in LA. So to have her come back and kind of do that was like, I was like, who can do news anchor good? And I was like, then I got the idea. I'm like, wait, I know all these alumni now. I'm friends with everybody. Why don't I just call them up to do all these bits? And so I got a lot of people to do voices. Adam Marcus, Ron Sloan, Deb, and Cynthia did the voices for the newsreel at the beginning of Ghost Cut. And then Tracy and Vinny came back to film like this quick little thing that we did in the basement of our post-production studio, just to have something there to that during COVID and having to do all this stuff. It was a real kind of, it was a real kind of task to get it done, but we ended up doing it. So yeah, Tracy is great. She's definitely one of the standouts of Fanboy. I would say she definitely has like a major role as far as where she pops up in the movie, and you know, kind of what happens to her and how it ties into like lots of stuff. So I think you'll be happy with what you see goes on with Tracy.
Yeah, I'm still in touch with Tracy, and I've had her on here a couple of times, and she said I make her feel good. And I'm like,
Mm,
good. Yeah, she likes talking to me.
yeah.
Um, and what about Judy Aronson? She's somebody I've never had on the show.
Judy is another. She became another really good friend of mine, and she was a blast to work with. She you know, she has a pretty big role in this film. She was, I mean, she was around for a few weeks, and had a lot to do. And her, again, it was like being around everybody and just spending time going out to dinner with the crew and stuff like that. Judy and I became great fans. So Judy, when we came back to LA, was kind enough to get me an invite to a screening of the final chapter of an original 35 millimeter print. Joe Zito was there, Lawrence Marnson was there, the twins were there, and Judy. And so they went up and they did their thing, and I was kind of there as their guest. And then I got to go out to dinner with everybody. And so that's when I got to sit down with Joe Zito and actually pick his brain about Friday the 13th and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?
I
Got a lot of
guarantee you didn't have Ted White there with Joe Zito. I know that.
No, I know. You know what? That's you know, after all these years, they don't have a problem with each other. They got into an argument there on set, but that
Mhm.
happens a lot. Like directors and actors and directors and producers and you know writers, like everybody argues. Like there's like I've seen fist fights on sets. You know what I mean? Like people get really passionate about what's going on and they get really angry. And you have one person trying to push for I got to get this movie done, another person saying, hey, we're putting people at risk. You know, it's that's an event that was over and done with in that moment, I guarantee.
Mhm.
And I mean, you know, Joe Zito went on. He's still direct. I think he lives in East Asia. He makes
Does he
movies.
really?
Yeah, he makes movies in Southern Asia.
Oh
I can't
wow.
remember if it's Philippines or it's one of the southern Asian countries where
Well,
he's based out of them.
Ted White's the only one I've had from the final chapter on my show, and I've had him on twice. Um, I haven't had any luck with any of the others, but I
Hmm,
think the final chapter had the most John Hughes like cast in the movie
definitely.
because they have that feeling of a John Hughes teen comedy.
Exactly. It's the kids from a John Hughes movie, go to get killed, and that's what I really like about Friday the 13th: The Final Chapters, because it like if you take away Jason, that's a coming of age story.
Oh,
It's a
I love the
comedy about
characters.
kids
Yeah,
trying to get laid for the weekend. And how many 80s movies were about a bunch of boner nerds trying to get laid? You
and
know, it,
Dead Fox.
and a bunch of dead fucks. Yeah, yeah, right.
Dead Fox.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of nice, and you have like all three different. You have different stages of relationships. You have different stages of dating. You got the couple that's been together for a while. You got the new couple. You got the love triangle. You got the two horny guys just trying to hook up with whatever will give them attention. And so like it's funny to watch each thing kind of unfold. And by the time Jason comes around, they're all in the middle of like their stories, and they all kind of come to a conclusion. And then at the end of the conclusion of their story, Jason kills them. So it's kind of a nice, or in the middle of like like Judy Aronson's character ends up getting killed because of the situation that develops within the house.
Hmm.
So yes, Friday the 13th movies may be the simple, like at least like just the effort to make motivation goes a long way. Because when it's just like, oh, I'm gonna go for a pee, and somebody gets killed, it's like
That
we've
was
seen
the
that before.
downside for part seven. With the exception of Tina, the characters were horrible.
Yeah, you kind of felt that like they were trying to recreate the final chapters kind of formula with their cast.
Yeah.
They were filled with more unlikable characters. So you had like the stuck up snob, you had, you know, the cousin who was kind of there and didn't really know anybody, and he was fine, and you know, Tina was fine, but there was so much conflict. You know what I mean? Like that movie was such driven by characters in conflict rather than characters sort of all enjoying each other's company. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that because there's so much antagonism within the film, it sort of guides the audience's viewing of the film that way. And some people do enjoy that type of Friday. They enjoy, oh, I want to meet a bunch of people that I end up hating, and I want to see them all die. You know, some people like that. I personally don't like watching films where I don't like the characters because I don't want to be in scenes with them. I don't want to watch scenes. I don't care what they're doing. It's like cut away, go back to somebody I like. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? So I think that's one place where the thinking of let's create unlikable characters. 2009 did that too. Create a bunch of
Yeah.
unlikable characters that we want to see get wasted, and spend very little time with the characters that we're actually involved with or we're actually emotionally attached to. So I'd rather
Mm-hmm.
see you create more scenes for that character and do less with them if they're just one note kind of things. Like you could cut out all the beer pong and all the shot taking and all the, even though I guess people like it, but like the stupendous boobs, like what did that scene really get you? Like, what is that saying about your film if Friday the 13th, the only thing people really remember is the stupendous boobs part? Like, what have you accomplished in that moment? Like, okay, like that's the best you got. Like, people should be talking about other things from that film, but that's really, it's one of the things people always go to, like, oh, but that part's funny. And it's like one part in a 90-minute movie. Like, you gotta,
Jason Lives has lots of funny parts, and people
it does.
remember it for those and other things.
I mean, even Jason X, to a degree, has a bunch of funny parts. You know, it has a bunch, but it also has a bunch of really campy and bad parts and bad
I didn't
CGI.
care. The only character I liked in Jason X was the android woman. That was
She was
it.
great.
And I
I thought
like
she was
David
good.
Cronenberg,
Yeah, that
but
was cool to see him. I thought that the pilot was good. I thought Todd Farmer's character wasn't bad. I thought that the kid who got his arm chopped off was pretty comedic. The lead actor who like built the robot was a little dorky. His like little kind of contentious relationship with I can't remember her name as a character. Like it was antagonistic, but it was fun. Like it felt like friends making fun of each other rather than people who didn't like each other making fun of each other. It
hmm
felt like there was a nice little camaraderie. Some of the jokes, like, oh, guys, it's okay. He just wanted his machete. Like, he just wanted his machete back. Like, sometimes there's a little bit of a cringy dad joke in there, but you know, and then like Jason doesn't really look that great. Harry Manfredini's score is really not like the top of the charts as far as like all of the films. Um, the overall CGI really ruins it in a lot of different places. But you know, that's the first movie I saw in the theaters, so it kind of has like a warm spot in my heart for like, okay,
I've
you were
seen a
my
few of them.
first. Yeah, you know, it's like you were
Yeah.
my first, and I had a good time watching you, even though I went in with the expectation like this is gonna be dog shit. Like, there's no way that this is going to be good. A movie that's been on a shelf for 2 years that was basically made like a sci-fi movie. Like, how could this be any good? And it was the experience that I share with my friends that sort of overtook what the movie actually was.
That makes
Um,
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and it makes sense. So I more associate it with the time that I spent there versus like Jason Goes to Hell, where my experience was watching it alone with nobody else and watching Jason blow up in the first 5 minutes and having my heart broken as a child. So it like that's the memory I have to it. And I think that like that was sort of like how I'm able to like, because we all give at least one Friday the 13th a pass that like probably shouldn't get a pass. But Jason X, I like. Part 5, I like. And there are other movies like 2009 and I think maybe Part
Well, part
7,
part
Freddy versus
five, I
Jason.
I love Melanie Kinnaman.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's gorgeous. Yep. I like the females in these films. Screw Jason, you know.
Yeah, I can see why.
Yeah. I did want to bring up. There's a few more things here. I don't know if you caught wind of this, but did you hear about the Doubtfire Face challenge that was going around on uh Never
No,
Hike Alone?
what's this? No,
Because
what?
you were nominated by Ron Sloan.
Oh, what's? Oh no, I know. I do know about this. And Ron was going to do it. Andrew and I were going to get together and do it while we were on the set of 13 Fanboy, and we never did. And then I came back from 13 Fanboy and I was going to do it. And we were got into production on Never Hike in the Snow. And so I was like, okay, once I'm done with this, like I'll do it. And then COVID hit,
Yeah.
and the
Oh,
whole idea, yeah,
don't put yourself at risk. Wait till after
yeah,
COVID, because Melanie Kinnaman's going to wait till after COVID. Um, Adrienne King's been nominated 4 times now. She said yes, and Adam Marcus has said if she hasn't done it by the time he does it, he's going to throw her fifth nomination her way.
okay,
Um, I caught wind of this whole thing after the Ice Bucket Challenge, and
hmm
it's for suicide and depression awareness. And I threw it out, and I think it was Troy Elke and Jason Bradford that really took and ran with it on
hmm
13 Fanboy. And Noelle Berger did it, and Haley Greenbauer was nominated. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Haley Greenbauer is nominated, and
Well, I'll get Haley. Maybe me, Haley, and Andrew can get together, and we can do it once the pandemic gets over. Because that was the whole fun. It was like, Andrew and I were gonna pie each other, so it was gonna be fun. But it was like, but when we couldn't do that, it sort of spoiled it. And then we were just like, then every day I just looked like I was living in COVID world. I was like,
mhm.
I just didn't. I was like, I don't feel
There's
like
no
dress up
time
today.
limit on. I'm not going to say you have 48 hours. I mean,
But it's definitely I'm glad you reminded me, because it's actually one of the things that I've been like, crap, I didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like life goes on, and then before you know it, you forgot that like that was even a thing.
well, when you guys do it, nominate people, even nominate some of the bigger names in 13 Fanboy.
All right, yeah,
Yep.
I'll see who I can get to do it.
Debbie Sue's been nominated a couple times. Um, Ron Sloan did it. Tracy Savage has been nominated a couple times.
hmm
Lar Park Lincoln's been nominated. Judy Aronson's been
I'll tell
nominated.
you what,
Judy.
I'll nominate Tom Matthews. I'll get Tom and Vinny to do it.
Okay.
That's what we'll do. I'll try to get everyone. I mean, I'll try to get everyone on the Never Hike in the Snow, the Never Hike crew to kind of go through and do it. That'd be fun, so people
Hmm.
can kind of get to know some of the more people other than me, who help make these films happen. Because it's not just me; it's a lot of people, and there would be no me without them. So let's see if we can get them some love.
Tom was nominated by Nancy McLaughlin. She did it in front of props from the movie.
Oh,
I'm
so
still in.
I'll double hit up Tom then, but I'll get Vinny. I'll get
Yep.
Vinny and Cynthia. Maybe we can get them to do it.
There you go. Yep. But I know I threw it out to Judy Aronson. I never had Judy Aronson on the show.
I could talk to Judy too. Yeah, no, I could forward an email at least.
Yeah. Well, Judy, I thought I got an idea. I threw it out to her on Cameo,
Hmm.
you know, but I put that I was a co-producer on 13 Fanboy, which is the truth. And she got back to me. She said due to COVID, she couldn't do it right now, but she said, I promise
hmm
I will do this.
All right, I
And
will. I will talk to her as well. I'll wrangle everybody up that I can get a hold of.
yep. And Tracy Savage, I said, wait till after, she didn't want to do it while her students were incapacitated with the whole, she didn't, but
hmm
um, Tracy Savage had said yes to me, and she's the reason I got involved with the film, so I hope she does it. you
Yeah.
know,
If not, I'll give her a reminder. I'm sure everybody's kind of how it is. It's just
but I wouldn't want anybody to put themselves at risk. I told Melanie Kinnaman, I said, wait till after, because
mm.
Melanie's into stand-up comedy now. I said,
Oh
you gotta do this.
yeah, I would love to see one of Melanie's sets. That'd be great.
Oh, gee,
I'm gonna have to look it up.
yeah, I would, I think she's awesome, but
I think that's one of the most interesting things about Friday the 13th is the fact that the more alumni that I've gotten to know,
hmm
um, I mean, a lot of them got out of the business. A lot of them like kind of like it was either one and done with Friday the 13th, or he did a couple of things. Like obviously, one of the famous cases is Larry Zerner becoming a lawyer, and all these different people going on to different things in their life. Uh, Amy Steele became a child psychologist. It's kind of crazy,
she's
but it's
somebody I wouldn't mind seeing do stuff for a
yeah.
challenge too.
So it's really nice that that getting to know the Friday the 13th alumni as people. It's nice to go see them at a convention and
Did
praise
Amy
them.
Steele use her child psychology on you because you're such a sucker for it?
Not just yet.
I'll tell you,
I didn't get a chance to actually, you know what she did? I got to I got to ask a question during that thing, and she was very sweet about her answer. So she did use her child psychology on me.
she bats those eyes. I'll tell you, yeah, she's
I'm
got
sure she can get
you.
away with anything. She's amazing. But no, it's all. I mean, all the alumni, like they've all up to so many cool things. Like Ron Sloan, is really big into like art.
Mm-hmm.
Deb doing everything she did. She became a teacher, and now she's producing her own films.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, who actually got into doing, he runs his own construction firm.
Mm-hmm.
Builds a lot of houses in LA. Built Ozzy Osbourne's house. Um,
He should be in the video. I think Graham Chapman from Monty Python was in an Ozzy Osbourne video, if I
he's actually, if
remember.
you go back and watch uh, Keeping Up with the Osbournes or whatever it is,
Yeah,
or like, he says if you look at certain episodes, you'll see him and his crew working. I think it's mostly through season 2 because they moved into that house and then they wanted a bunch of things changed, and so Tom's company was the one that went in and made all the changes. So they were the ones who were moving the pool and like putting up chandeliers and all that stuff. So sometimes Tom's floating around in the background working on some of these shots. It's very funny.
you think he's going to bring Ozzy Osbourne with him next time to dig up Jason, since
I don't
Horseshack is
think
no?
Ozzy's going anywhere. I think if Ozzy's digging anything, it's going to be his own grave. I saw him to do like some kind of reward reception, and it's like, man, they're still just like putting him out there, putting the hat and the glasses on him, and it's just, I just feel like, can you just leave that man alone? Can you just let him hang with his dogs and watch his giant TV with his giant controller and just let him be at peace? Let him
But
just live out the rest of his days not being harassed by us, please.
yeah, but yeah, wait till after COVID, and if you and
Yeah.
Andrew and Haley, because Haley was nominated by Jason Bradford, he really
Well,
went
as soon as
after
I get
her.
my shots, as soon as
Yep,
I'm done getting my shots, and Andrew's got his shots and Haley's got his shots, we'll all go pie each other to celebrate
yeah, and each nominate
and do
three
something good.
people.
We will. What we'll do is we'll try to use that to leapfrog into nominating some 13 fanboy people and some Never Hike people, and
Yeah,
try to get a few more like notable names, especially Friday the 13th alumni on this cause, because it is a good cause. And I mean,
yeah.
speaking of it, like I suffer from depression. I have things that
I'm
I have to
taking
deal with.
medication for it too.
I think we're all on medication, aren't we?
Yeah.
Something.
Well,
And
Lisa Langlois did it from class of 1984, and she's a good friend of mine. And I
cool.
even did it with her in Toronto when I was there last.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and uh, Bobo, one of the Howard Stern Whack Packers, did it.
That's cool.
I often nominate females because I there's a reason I'm single. I think women are funny,
Oh, well, I
which
mean,
is
women are
probably
funny.
why I'm single. But but I did throw it out because Bobo, I apparently, according to Howard Stern, he does anything he's asked, and I was like, Ariel Teal Toom, Roddy Piper's daughter, she did it.
Oh, that's great.
Yep, she did it. I'm still in touch with her. Yeah, I've had a few people have done it that I threw it out to, and but yeah, I've had Jason Bradford has done it, and he said he's going to do it again because he wants to be the next person to throw it at Tracy Savage.
Well, we'll get her in our group. I'll have
Yep.
Haley or Andrew nominate her.
Yeah. So there's no money in it. There's no
I don't need
money
money for
coming.
it. No, I
No,
mean,
it's just something to well, I'm going to tell you, I'll give you an example. Sandy Johnson from Halloween did it, and I just got mail from her today, actually. She was Judith Myers. She
hmm,
did the Doubtfire Face challenge, and she had her husband dressed up as Michael Myers,
hmm.
pie her in the face. And she did this before the lockdown. But during the lockdown, she reposted it on Facebook saying, here's something to cheer people up during these hard times. And the response was so awesome.
That's cool.
People were saying things like, I really needed this. This was a lot of fun to watch. Thanks for posting this. And Sandy's a doll.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, I think anybody's looking for anything, to cheer them up these days. But I think, Yeah, I'm definitely down for it. It's you. I mean, again, like you just reminded me. I'm like, oh yeah, that thing. I've been meaning to get to it. It's like
Yeah.
so definitely down about it.
But Noelle Berger has done it as well,
Cool.
and I've had her on here as well. I've had some of the people, like I had Chrissy Fontenot on here,
Hmm.
and Troy Elke. Troy Elke asked an interesting question too. He does a voiceover in 13 Fanboy, although he should be seen with that big bearded face of his. I tell you, but he thinks there's a connection between Pamela Voorhees and Roy,
Hmm. How?
because you notice that Joey is handicapped,
Hmm.
and and um he was his theory is there's a connection that Roy is not just some ambulance driver in this, that he's connected. What do you think of that theory?
I think that there could be something that like there's like an extension. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like there's an extension of the curse that like whatever whatever inspired Pamela inspired him in a way that like there's almost something that like drew him in a way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely down. I definitely like the idea of again like there's that side of it. There's also him trying to frame Tommy. I think that if the film would have done a little bit better of a job of him actually successfully framing Tommy and make it look like it was him, it would make more sense. Um, but the fact that he goes on like a murder spree and kills a bunch of people that don't even have anything to do with his
Yeah,
son's death
didn't even
is
touch the person that actually killed the person. It's like
yeah.
death
So
wish,
so
you
there's
know
almost sort of like in those actions you could justify that there was something beyond just revenge of the people that were at that were at Pinehurst, but like this is the continuation of punishing people from Crystal Lake. Or I mean at this point, like where is Pinehurst in relation to Crystal Lake? I wonder what that's a question I've always had. I don't think I quite know the answer. um
what do
but
you
it would
think
be interesting to know.
happened in between part 5 and 6? Do you think he killed Pamela? I often theoried that that is her truck that he's driving at the beginning of
Oh,
part 6.
Melanie. No, I don't think I think he attacked her, but I don't think he killed her.
Okay.
And that is kind of the thought that like he's driving that truck. Like for me, I think it was he did his time. Either he broke out of wherever he was, or he I think they had him at Weston Hills, right? They had it, and in the game they said he was at Weston Hills. I don't really like kind of the way they had sort of his story kind of peel off in those tapes. I'm not even a huge fan of the Pamela tapes either with some of the stuff that's going on there. But that's again, it's everybody has their different theories. You know, have Tom and Adam coming or Tom and Adam Green doing those two things. They're both capable directors and storytellers. But as a Friday the 13th fan, it lands into that it's not my slice of the pie. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you're writing something outside of my jurisdiction of what I consider it to be. Um, so as a fan, I can only enjoy it so much because it's kind of like this is nice, but there's a lot of things that kind of rub me the wrong way. I think that like with Tommy, he got out, and with the things that we have going on in Never Hike Alone, it's this sense of that he has to go back and finish the job. Jason's going to come back unless he does something. There's this ever growing fear. And I think that there's somewhat of a curse that, like, when he digs up Jason, it's the curse making him do it, making him think that this is what he has to do in
You got
order
to
to.
resurrect Horshack.
Yeah, right. That'll be another one. Somebody digs up the grave and they accidentally bring him back to life.
And one more thing too.
Pause.
I've got the big box set sitting over there. Do you have the box set?
I do. It's actually right behind my. It's actually right under my printer.
It's missing this.
See, mine's not. I actually
I'm
took the.
sorry. You know what? This is, I'm going to say it. I put this in the top 5.
Thank you.
I do.
So what I did is I took the 2009 movie out,
Mm-hmm.
and I took everything out of that black case, and I took one of the other Friday. I took our black. I had extra black covers from the first edition, so I
Uh-huh.
slipped one of those into the black case, and I took one of our additional Blu-ray discs that we had from the first edition, threw that in there, so it goes all the way through Freddy versus Jason, and then Never Hike Alone's right there, tucked in the back.
Well,
And 2009, I just kind of skirted off to the side and put it in another case somewhere.
Well, part two, I love the fact that Carl Fullerton still had those cut scenes from part two.
Mm.
I've seen some updated, like cleaned up versions of those online. I'm wondering if somehow they could splice those into the movie and make an uncut version.
Honestly, completely being honest, I really loved looking at the behind the scenes. I would say that the cuts that they made were good cuts based on the fact that like the shots fall apart really quickly after they
Mhm.
made the cut. There's some pretty funny deaths. Like I think the one that stands out to me is the sheriff's death, which takes him way too long to die. He's like slowly falling out of the screen, and I know that I think they wiped to white, they dissolved to white to like get out of it. But if they hung on that death, it would be hilarious. I mean, like you, like even like you know, it's the one that I thought was interesting that I think opens up a new theory because I know Adrian really pushes for it. And what I've seen her post is did Alice really die? Because if you look at the injury that Alice suffered, it's not fatal. It's
Yeah, but you know what?
through.
Do you look at the cabin at the end? You see Alice's
You
corpse.
do, and and that's
You know,
that is the thing that will trip up her theory is
Adrian
the.
likes to deny that, but
I
even the
know,
house coat on it, you can
I know.
see it.
I know.
And
I trust me. I think that she died. I think
yeah,
that they didn't show that shot because it like people would be like, why would she die from that? Maybe she's going to come back. Um, but I could see like if you use that shot in the film where Adrian would have a, a a fighting chance to say that Alice survived.
yeah. Speaking of which, and I forgot about this, and now I got to bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
Between parts one and parts two, I often wonder because you know the sheriff's body, Deputy Winslow ends up in there. You see Terry's body in there.
Mm-hmm.
I often wonder, did Adrian King or Alice, did she have any company during that time? Were there other bodies in there?
You mean like her corpse?
Yeah, were there other
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that like the bodies were all piled up. You know what I mean? Like I think that that's what Jason does. It's like when he kills somebody, he drags them back to wherever he is and just hides the bodies. And that's sort of like a big thing in Never Hike Alone is that our Jason packs away bodies. Like when somebody gets killed, he makes them disappear. And that's why we name the I mean, the Disappear was the name of the song, but Disappear is also the name of sort of the direction of it, which is showing that like when you go into Crystal Lake, you disappear off the face of
yeah.
the earth and no one knows where you go. You're just missing. And so that was kind of one of the elements we wanted to bring back into Friday the 13th to make it scary again was that like, let's not make this like, let's make this like this, let's make the stakes real. Let's show the real world thing of like, what's the aftermath of like, these aren't just cannon fodder characters that are getting knocked off one by one, that these are people that are being erased from life. And there's something very emotional and compelling about that.
Alice is somebody I always felt sad for because she got brought into this by Steve Christie. He
Mm-hmm.
convinced her to stay,
Mm-hmm.
and she takes this risk by going back to Crystal Lake there and
Mm-hmm.
the little apartment or whatever. And your mom calls her. Take this as a real life situation. Imagine
It's
your
sad.
daughter disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And if they find the bodies in that cabin, this is where your daughter was all that friggin' time.
Oh, that's a good one. That'd actually be like, and I think you get a little bit of that in part four when you have that scene, which is sort of what Never Hike in the Snow is based off of. So
Hmm.
part of what we tried to do with Never Hike in the Snow with that scene with Diana Hill and Rick is that scene. Like what happens when that happens? Like what do those conversations sound like? And in this case, it isn't the end of the movie where we're like, well, your kid was killed by Jason Voorhees. This one is kind of like, this is how we keep it a secret. Let me fish you for information, but I'm not going to give you information. And that's ultimately Rick's biggest fault is his feeling like he has to hold on to the secret and protect everyone else. But by protecting the information, he's actually putting everyone else at risk.
I see a what like I always joked, and I've said to Adrian King when I interviewed her in 2015. I said my favorite shot in part one is a shot because I saw part two before part one.
Mhm.
I said it was great that my favorite shot was when that close up shot where she smiles, and I'm like, I just melted, you know. Yeah, and it's funny now. I look at it so differently. She shows up, and you can't see what's ahead of you,
Mhm.
and it's like, look where she's going to go in 2 months. She's gonna be in this shack. I,
Yeah.
I feel such a sense of dread, and it's all
Yeah,
Steve Christie's fault.
it really is. I mean, it's all Steve Christie's fault, and I think that that's something that um, that kind of, I don't know, it helps kind of ground the franchise in a way that it's like they're not just empty vessels. They're characters who were living, breathing people who had goals and ambitions and ideas and all these different um, like life goals. You know what I mean? And then it's just gone.
you could
All
almost
because of this.
you could almost do another movie in between Alice's demise and part two. I
Yeah,
often
totally.
wondered, were there anybody? I mean, they say, this place, I mean, Paul says, this place has been dormant for 5 years, but who knows if somebody wasn't like Andrew Leahy or somebody like
Well, Chris
going around
Higgins.
with
So
good.
who was the other Chris Higgins in this equation? You know what I mean? Like how many other people
Yeah.
was Jason forced to kill? I mean, Alice's body is in there. I don't think there were any other bodies that necessarily indicate that anyone else was there, but there are those places. I mean, that's why sort of when we did the part 8 to Never Hike Alone thing, that we have this big gap to like explore, like what has this 20-year gap been? What happened in this 20 years? Well, in one version we have disappear. 3 people ended up at Camp Crystal Lake because they heard about it, and they go there to party and kind of like throw it in the face of this curse, and then they end up getting killed. And then many years later, you have somebody who accidentally discovers it by finding it on a satellite map. So they seek it out and they accidentally take a picture of Jason and they get killed. And so the story of Never Hike Alone, even from that standpoint, is somebody hiked in and stumbled upon it and didn't know what it was and ended up getting chased by Jason. And that's the spirit of Never Hike Alone. It's a story that's supposed to take place between the films. It's the story that happens to the characters that you never knew about. The original version of Never Hike Alone that ended with Andrew dying was supposed to be sort of what Never Hike in the Snow was, which is like, this is the story of someone who went in and never came out.
Wow. Well, I like your thought process. You obviously put a lot of thought in this, and Dave McRae has
Too
given
much.
you
Yeah.
well, Dave McRae's given you a lot of praise, and we haven't touched on Dylan's New Nightmare. You got anything to say about that? I know Dave is
Yeah,
booked
I mean, actually,
playing
I'd like to
Freddy.
talk about a couple of projects just real quick
Yeah,
before we
please.
get
Yeah,
going.
go
Yeah,
for
just I'll kind of just run down the list of them. Let's start with Dylan's New Nightmare. So, for fans that are listening, definitely check out Dylan's New Nightmare, which is part of the Horror Show channel's release schedule.
it.
That's
Mm-hmm.
Cecil Laird, who runs that channel over there with a few other great people. He brought me on as a co-producer to help kind of bring a team together that could help build this project. Was met Miko Hughes, brought him on. If
Mm-hmm.
people aren't familiar, it's set in the world of Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's
Mm-hmm.
an extension of that storyline. So Dylan, played by Miko Hughes in the original film, who was also in Pet Cemetery and Kindergarten Cop and a lot of other movies. He was a very successful child actor. Miko is coming back. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people met him on the convention circuit as well. I've seen him out there a lot. He comes back and reprises the role of Dylan, the son of Nancy, of Heather Langenkamp, who this spirit that Freddy Krueger is based on in this world has kind of held on to the last nugget of fear that Dylan had, and has spent years fighting the Guardian, who is Rex, and is finally, now in this day and age when Dylan is a full-fledged adult, he's dealing with depression, anxiety, life choices, the existential dread that we all go through as we start to get older. Now that those things are starting to take over his childlike innocence as an adult, Freddy's coming back into the real world again. And so we pick up a story there, many years down the line. And, I read the script. I really fell in love with it. Dave came on. He's going to be playing Freddy Krueger. Nora Hewitt is doing the makeup and effects for it. So they're building a brand new Freddy costume for that, brand new Freddy glove. Obviously having Miko there is there. I don't want to say it's official, but I have talked to Ron Sloan about doing a cameo in the film, and
Oh,
we're trying to bring other
nice.
people in to cast. So we think that like we're going to build this really nice. It's going to be a short film. It'll probably be between 20 and 30 minutes.
Got a question. Did you because Dave McRae is also doing the
It's me,
Black
Billy.
Christmas. It's me, Billy, and I chipped in to get a Blu-ray for that as well.
I
That
chipped in for a
looks
Blu-ray on that.
that
It looks
looks
great.
good.
Well,
Like
it's
I
nice
like
is
it
that
when
Dave and I kind of got to talk about it.
yeah, I know. I listened to the interview.
Oh yeah. So like even off channel, you know what I mean? When we were talking about Dylan's, and in fact, he was telling me about It's Me Billy when we started making Dylan's, and so
Hmm.
I think that everyone's had what's nice is that like everyone is doing it. Everyone's had a couple questions for me, but everyone's completely capable of doing it on its own. But it's nice to know that like we've all been kind of here for each other. So you have, Dylan's New Nightmare, which we're really excited about. I think we're going to do another crowdfund for it just because it's been a year since more people have discovered it. We want to kind of open up the books again and say like, hey, you know what? Now that we're going to get back into it, we're going to film later this year. Why don't we see if we can raise a little bit more money and make life a little bit easier for us, get a couple more
Hmm.
things, maybe expand the scenes a little bit. So we're probably going to do that this summer. Dylan, I mean, It's Me Billy comes out in about a month. So definitely check that out when that one's done
Yeah.
fulfilling. And maybe they'll do another post campaign for home video afterwards, which would be really nice. I'm sure fans would want to jump in afterwards after they've seen the film and say, I do want to own this. The other film that we're involved with is a film called Jason Rising, which is done by two friends of mine, James Sweet and Carl Winery. They're based out of Portland, Oregon, and Wood something, Washington. Anyway, that's going to be coming out later this year. We've been working on it
Hmm.
for the last couple of years. COVID put a dampen on it. We've been pushing that crowdfund. So that crowdfund is live right now. It's in demand. I would definitely say that people should check that out. It's going to be worthwhile. We got a lot of surprises in there for people that we think they're really going to love. I had a hand in co-producing it, co-writing it. I played Jason for one scene in it, and just overall, I mean, I've gone up there and I've helped them out. I've kind of co-directed a few scenes, or I've gone in and just consulted on some stuff and done rewrites and helped them with editorial. So they're really coming together. They're getting close. COVID was a big challenge for them, but
Did
now
you
they're overcoming the hump.
did you hear of Victim No More?
I've heard of Victim No More. I've heard of
I'm
his name
I'm
was Jason.
I'm part of Victim No More.
Oh, great.
Bobby Heckman is the director behind that, and
Cool.
I signed an NDA, but the one cast member he did announce was Jill Whitlow
Cool.
from Night of the Creeps, but he's got
Yeah.
some really good players in this, and I'm tight-lipped about it. But
Great. Yeah,
I'm
definitely give them that ability to kind of surprise people and let people know at
yeah,
the end. I'm trying to
well,
think of what else.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's things kind of falling through the cracks, but I mean, I'm other than that, I'm sort of co-producing on a lot of different projects, consulting on different projects. We obviously have Never Hike Alone 2, which we have to start preparing for. We have the Ghost Chicken project, which will be coming out maybe next year by the time we get done animating, that we're really excited about kind of getting done.
I would like
And
to support. I've had to pull back. I think the last thing I put support on was Z Dead End for Robert
mm,
Westrow. I had to pull back somewhat because I had to tell people I don't make money at this podcast. I work as a cleaner. I make less than $15 an hour, and my cat ain't paying rent here. I have to pay it, but I'm busy trying to get a housing project up with my brother where we all live and have solar panels on there so that we can, live comfortably, and
I feel you.
yeah, and I get so many people hitting me up to support their it's either me or Noelle, and I think Noelle's probably more well off than I am, but I'm gonna tell you, and I hate being rude to people, but I just don't have the money. You know what? I'm not going to name names.
I feel you. I mean, I only have, It's the same thing. It's like I get a lot of people, like I do a lot of consulting, and there's a
Yeah.
few. Oh, another project that's going on right now that's probably worth mentioning is My Bloody Valentine. The what's it called? It's My Bloody Valentine.
I've had
Fan film.
Ellen Udy on from
Valentine Bluffs. It's called Valentine Bluffs. It's by a good friend of mine, Chuck Ryan. That's crowdfunding right now, which is really really cool. In fact, the original Harry Warden is now a producer on the film.
Oh, nice. Ellen Udy, by the way, was another person that did the Doubtfire challenge.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she did it. Hers was so funny too.
That's cool.
I had her on from My Bloody Valentine. Because she's a clown,
Oh, like an
like a
actual
real
like working
clown. She
clown. That's
walks on stilts and stuff like that. She does that whole thing,
mm-hmm.
and I had to throw it at her,
Well, I think that's definitely awesome.
Yeah, well, she does that kind of entertainment now, entertains
Hmm.
kids and stuff,
Well, that's
and I
good.
yeah, so but I was like, wow, and she was in My Bloody Valentine, but yeah, so I would love to help out on the next Never Hike Alone movie.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've told people I've got to get things financially stable here. I
Well, you
just
got
did it.
plenty of time. We're
I
not
did
gonna
that.
we're not gonna we're not gonna fundraise until the end of the year. And what we're trying to do more than anything is not say give us $100. Well, if you want to, like, trust me, if you want to give us more, give us more. The goal is 10,000 fans, $20. Or
And you get
I
and you
think
get
Blu-rays are probably going to be $25. Is that we'll end up charging them? It's $5 for shipping, so it's $30 at the end of the day. But if we can get 10,000 people to do $30, and then a handful of those 10,000 people are going to get higher things, EP credits, producer credits, additional merch. They're going to spend $50, $60. There will be those fans. But for the casual fan, even if we got $5 for a credit,
what
you know what
about
I
a
mean?
perk where you can give Kane Hodder a wedgie?
That, I mean, if I can convince Kane,
Did you ever hear some of the stories Jason Bradford told about Jennifer Bonko?
no.
I'll share this because it just I was talking to him on the phone in my car when I got parked one night. He
Mm-hmm.
told me this story and I nearly pissed myself laughing.
That's
I
funny.
guess her dad was around with her for that movie as well, and he was traveling with her.
Mm-hmm.
And Jason Bradford told me that they had such a great relationship, but I guess her dad plays pranks on her. And Jason shared with me a prank that he played on her where she was still living at home, and he got up early and he put saran wrap on the toilet. And when she went in the next morning to take a leak,
Oh,
I laughed.
that's funny.
I'm like, poor Jennifer Blanco. I guess they have a good sense of humor on each other,
Yeah, well, I mean, they've known each other for so long. I'm sure they
you know. But yeah, because I know Jason Bradford drove her to the airport, but he told of what wonderful experiences being around Jennifer Blanco.
I can imagine. And I mean, I got to be around Jennifer a little bit too, and she was great. I mean, she was a lot of fun to work with. She has a lot of energy,
Hmm.
and yeah, I had a lot of fun, kind of just hanging out with everybody on that crew. Honestly,
So, who are you still in touch with? Are you like who you talk to on a regular basis? Like, you're still in close contact with Andrew and Haley? Like, do
oh
you
yeah.
see each other like physically or
I mean, not these days, but we normally
okay?
do. I mean, we cross pollinate all the time. I mean, like before COVID, I was like hanging out with Judy, and we obviously had Tracy over. I see Tom from I mean, I literally live 5 minutes from Tom now.
Tom
And
Matthews?
yeah, and Vinny lives another 10 minutes across like across the valley. Um, I talk to Deb occasionally. I talk to Adam occasionally. I talk to Tom McLaughlin occasionally. I talk to Doug Tate occasionally. Yeah, I mean, like everybody from the Never Hike Alone crew, we keep in touch, and then everybody who I've met on the convention circuit and through 13 Fanboy and through other things, we're also very friendly. I mean, I talk to Ron every now and then. We've talked on the phone quite a bit, try to get, as we're talking about the Dylan's New Nightmare thing, and just really trying to like, I see these people as friends, actors, so
Hmm.
it's like, hey, let's all work together. Let's if I come up with something, I'll come up with something for you.
And I
I'll
love
get
the
you in the
fact
movie. I'll
that
get you a
they
nice little spot.
I love the fact they get Carol Locatel and Never Hike Alone, or not Never Hike Alone, 13 Fanboy as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did she give you any stew?
No, but she was a sweetheart. And she had a fun scene with Ron. So it was fun to watch them kind of get back together because they definitely were like, I got to see them sort of in their element, which was really great. And so to be in person, to see them kind of doing the scene and stuff like that, and then kind of messing with it on camera, I was like really kind of happy with that to like to be a part of that.
Wow. Well, hopefully, COVID will take a hike because I want to be able to travel this year.
Yeah, right.
I miss it. I miss it. Um, have you met Nancy McLaughlin? She must live handy to you.
I haven't met Nancy. We um
She is awesome, by the
yeah,
way.
she seems very cool. I unfortunately haven't met her.
Well, here's something I got. I can show you that I got from Nancy. She put a little happy face on there, but
Oh, that's nice.
this was cool, and she sent one of these to me.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah,
Oh, that's really rad.
yep. It's number two. Jason Bradford's got the first one.
Ah, lucky.
Yeah, but I talk to Nancy McLaughlin on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah, I haven't met her yet, but I've heard great things.
She is lovely.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah, I connected her with Sean Clark. I gotta get Sean Clark connected with you because I think it would be beneficial for him to have you on the convention scene. I know he's not a big fan film person, but he did react well when he saw this. So,
Well, I mean, I definitely enjoy that, and
yep.
I think really where it really is at is that he should put, or she'd help get Tom and Vinny into things. You know what I mean? Like
I
we could
know he
do a whole Never Hike
he
Alone tour.
represents Tom.
Does he? I think
Yeah.
somebody else represents Tom.
For
I
the
want to say a guy named
convention.
Mike. I think Mike represents Tom. I think Mike is his guy.
I don't
But hey,
know.
I could be wrong. I
Maybe
I
I'm
don't
wrong.
know.
I know on his webpage, I'm sure Tom Matthews, his face was on there, but hey, I haven't looked at that page in a while, so maybe I'm thinking the wrong thing. But
Maybe, but you know what? If you end up talking to him and he wants to put somebody on his roster, I'd be happy. I love
okay.
conventions. I love doing the film festival circuit. I love doing independent film panels. Like anytime I can go and talk about film. Obviously, we've been talking probably for hours now.
Yeah.
I just love to talk about it. I love to be on. I think that like if I'm not as a filmmaker, but just as a personality of like a super fan, also a filmmaker, also, I've worked on other films. I'm involved with 13 Fanboy. I think after this year, after a few things that I've acted in come out and stuff like that, I might be a little bit more of a desirable convention person.
Hmm.
But in the meantime, I still think I have a lot to offer the community,
Oh, I
the
think
horror
so.
community, and kind of and and really kind of just, yeah, I mean, I want to be a part of the horror community. I want this to be my life, and the more I can do that, the better.
So when are we going to get Tommy Wiseau versus Jason?
I don't think we're ever gonna get that.
How about Neil Breen versus Jason?
I can't even. I wouldn't be able to pick him out of a hat.
Okay, what about Jason versus Birdemic?
Oh my God! Please just spare me now. I think we've had enough of. I think we've had enough birdemics.
Anything else you want to plug and promote on here?
Yeah, I mean, everyone should just make sure they're following us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube
Mm-hmm.
at Womp Stomp Films, WompStompFilms.
Mm-hmm.
Womp Stomp. So definitely check us out there. We have been a little quiet lately just because we're waiting for our Blu-rays. As soon as the Blu-rays come in, we have something to post about. Um, I don't really kind of post on. I don't post enough on social media to be like, oh, let me just keep posting pictures of the same old thing. It's like if it's not new, I don't want to post it. So I think once we get that, we'll have a fresh batch of things to kind of post about because we'll be really excited about getting the Blu-rays out. Keep an eye out this summer for the Ghost Cut, which we'll be releasing on Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do a special edition, first edition Bluray. The same thing we're doing with Never Hike in the Snow.
I'll have to order that. Yes, I
Yeah,
will
definitely.
order it.
Jason Rising and Valentine Bluffs. Check those out. Those are
Mm-hmm.
campaigning now. Keep an eye out for Dylan's New Nightmare. Keep an eye out for Ghost Chicken. And yeah, just keep supporting and spreading the word about Never Hike Alone. Show your friends, make them watch it on YouTube 10
I
times.
always
Get those play
share.
counts up.
I always
Yeah.
share. Yeah, I have you on Facebook, and I share this stuff out, and yeah, I'm honored to be part of 13 Fanboy. I gotta say,
Yeah, I think people are going to be really proud when it comes out. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be good to see a bunch of the alumni out there doing their thing.
I couldn't get on set. It was number one, I was working. Number two, affording to go there was a different story. But it's funny because although I wasn't on set, I kind of I feel like I have been on set because I've been watching Jason Bradford, Noelle Berger, and
Mm.
everybody posting about their experiences, and I kind of live vicariously through that. And I really, even though I'm a co-producer, but my picture's in the movie, but it's like I
Say it,
feel
and you get to see your
part of
name
it.
at the end of the movie. It's
Yeah.
definitely nice when you watch that and you see that like for the rest of time, your name will be associated with it. And the people who have worked on Never Hike Alone, like the people who have who have backed us, even as just a backer, even just to have the name and the credit in the special features.
I didn't
Um,
back this one, but I did back Never Hike in the Snow.
so your name should be in there.
My name is in there,
And it's
but
with that 2,500 other people.
yep. I would like to support better, and I'm hoping I'm able to when the time comes because I like what you're doing.
Thank you. And I think that like really, I mean, the support, like even when people they aren't financially able to or they don't feel like it's their thing, they can do a lot just by spreading the word, just by getting other people involved who may be interested, who may want to give just as much or more, or have the ability to come in and say, you know what? I won the lottery last week and I'd love to see a Friday the 13th and be a producer on that. Hey, if you've got a lot of money to burn and you're a Friday the 13th fan and you want to be forever kind of connected to this franchise, Never Hike Alone's a pretty good shot to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's worth the gamble. And at the end of the day, it's going to be something that, Never Hike Alone is already something that people talk about. And if we complete Never Hike Alone 2 and it becomes a full piece, at the end of Never Hike Alone 2, there's going to be a movie. And at the end of that movie is going to be a version where I sit down with an editor and I go, let's take Disappear, Never Hike in the Snow, Never Hike Alone, and Never Hike Alone 2 and make the Snyder cut of Never Hike Alone, this 3.5 hour cut of everything.
Mm-hmm.
We might lose a couple pieces here and there just to make it flow, but hey, let's show how the timeline all kind of works
Mm-hmm.
because it's all supposed to take place in between each other and around each other, and it's just a different way of storytelling. Mostly at first based on necessity, and now that we can actually raise the proper funds, we'll do a true blue film
Mm-hmm.
that is more traditional with the traditional ending because we didn't want Never Hike Alone to be the end of the story. We wanted Never Hike Alone to be just the beginning of the story. And that's what we're trying to build to. We did the ending of Never Hike Alone because we had this movie sitting on the backside. And I wouldn't have done that unless the movie was that good. And I really do believe in it. And I think that
Oh yeah.
as much as I believed in Never Hike Alone when I was doing it, I realized that the real golden egg in this was Never Hike Alone 2 and saying, this is the story we've always wanted. This makes sense. These characters are on a mission. These characters have drive. These characters have emotion. We're connected to Tommy. We're connected to Kyle. We're connected to Diana. We're connected to Rick, and we're connected to Jason. Now we all want to see where this goes. Let us bring this train home, park it, and call it a day. And when the movies come back, the movies come back. But I think Never Hike Alone 2 would be one of the greatest ways for a fan base to rally, get something done, and leave their mark on the franchise. And at the end of the day, when those credits roll, it's going to be those 5 to 10,000 names of people that made it happen. Yes, our core group of people are going to go out there and do the work and get it done, but it's going to be the fan base getting together and rallying around and saying, sorry, studios, but you've just been sitting on your hands too long.
Is there
And
gonna
here's
be
what we got.
any? Is there gonna be any dead fucks in these movies?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of dead fucks. And that's the great thing. It's like now we really get to unleash our Jason. Like we've really been kind of like it's a bold strategy to hold back, but we've been holding back because we know that in order to do it right, we need the proper funding. And once we have the proper funding, we can execute the things at the level that we believe that this story should be executed at. I I really kind of buck at taking the risk at trying to tell this story without the proper resources because it
Mm-hmm.
deserves the proper resources. You got to tell this, like when you're making a film, you need to build a film that's built to your budget. You know, you have to build it within the context of what you can actually make. And so if you can't compromise, you got to find a way to make that money. And so I've had to compromise what I would do to say if like Warner Brothers came in and said, hey, make Never Hike Alone 2. Well, guess what? We got fire, we got lightning effects, we got rain, we got all that stuff. If I can't afford a rain machine, I can't afford VFX lightning, and I can't afford fire, well, I need to come up with something that can match the budget that I can do, but I need to make it equally as entertaining.
Yeah.
The film can be just as emotionally driven without the fire, without the lightning, without the rain. It would look nicer, but hey, those are sacrifices I can make. What I can't sacrifice are the character arcs, the settings, the all that stuff, because it's all been built into the pipeline. So
Yep.
we're trying to execute this in a way that, like, yeah, maybe we don't get to do some of the crazier ideas that we had, but we can still execute some crazy ideas that we have. And at the end of the day, if we execute this final scene and have the money for the final scenes, that's where it's all going to pay off. And so ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to save fans the grief of having to go through 4 crowdfunding campaigns. Let's do one. You know, let's do this ghost cut. I mean, let's do 3 really. Let's do the ghost cut. Let's do Never Hike Alone 2, and let's do the last chance on Never Hike Alone 2. Raise between $250,000 and $350,000 to do a complete production and blow the world of Friday the 13th out of the water. You know what I mean?
That sounds fantastic, and that sounds fantastic. Are you going to tell the untold story of Muffin?
You know, I asked, that was my question for Amy. I said, Amy, is Muffin really dead? Because it was there. And she was like, well, that end scene's supposed to be a dream. So you take it from there. And I was like, you're using your child psychology mind tricks on me to not answer the question or to make me try to realize that Muffin's really dead.
Yeah, we need
Adventures of
Muffin, the
Muffin.
movie.
Yeah, we'll do the animated Adventures of Muffin. That will be another spinoff that we do.
Muffin, Gordon, and Toby.
Yeah, that will be like in Never Hike Alone, the streaming series, like in the 5th season when we're really out of stories to tell. We have like what's it, Homeward Bound with all the animals from Friday the 13th. You have the dogs. You have all the dogs working together.
You got Alice's cat.
Yeah, Alice's cat. Like
What a helpful cat that was.
it just keeps jumping in at like the worst time possible. That's what it keeps disappearing, and then it only shows up when it's like not supposed to. It'll be great.
There you go. There you go. Well, you know what? I had a great time talking with you today, and
Me too, Greg.
I've been enjoyed keeping connected with you. Eventually I gotta get Andrew Leahy on here. I haven't got him. I'm friends with him on Facebook, but I haven't had him on here yet.
I'll tell you what, you want to add something to your collection?
Huh.
Would you like one of these? This is
Yeah.
the script for Never Hike Alone. So the final conformed script, and on the back of it is a map on how to find our camp.
Oh yeah.
And there's an Easter egg in here on this page right here. This
About
is
Muffin?
Nope, this is about it's a letter from Rick Cologne. So what I'll do is I'll send this your way. So shoot me your address and I'll send this to you.
Oh,
nice
I
and signed up.
appreciate that. I don't mind paying for that.
Don't worry about it. It's on me.
Oh, thank you very much, man. I
problem.
appreciate that, and I'll do a video on it whenever I get it. Because I
And
got
just tell people that if they want one, I have maybe 20 left. So if they want to hit me up, I'll sell. But this is my donation to get the word out there that we have about 25 scripts left. And if people email me at wompstompfilms@gmail.com, I'll happily sell them a copy to cover the cost of shipping and just what it costs to print them.
Oh, I appreciate it. I don't mind paying for it though.
No, it's perfectly fine. This one,
You know.
like I said, like this is sometimes when you have product, you have to sort of put it out in the world.
Well, you know what? I'll do a video when I get it here, because
That's how you can pay me back, is doing a video on it and saying, give me a review of the writing.
well, I
Let me
got
know how it is.
Sandy Johnson just sent me a package today, and I got to do a video on receiving that. And
Hmm.
yeah, so
Well,
I've
this should
got
be back. This should be out to you in about a week.
maybe depending on how the mail travels.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the other thing that's really been a hindrance is, mail between USA and Canada is something we have to watch out. Mail between USA and the world is another thing we have to worry about. So we really got to watch ourselves.
And
You know what I mean?
Adrian
Like,
King can't ship her wine here.
oh, she still can't ship it there yet?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad.
I'm like, it's dangling right in front of me.
She should just not say it's wine. I didn't say it.
I'm like, I'd like to try that.
Yeah, right. Just say
Yeah,
it's something else.
it's crazy Ralph juice.
Yeah, right. It's fake blood. It's a
Oh
Halloween
yeah.
costume. That usually gets them.
I'll
It's
send you my mailing address, and yeah, I appreciate that. I would love that. Sign it
sounds
for
good.
me too, please.
Yeah, I'll customize it. If you want anything special in there, let me know specifically, but I'll put something in there.
Oh, I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Oh, the Axel thing in your movie, that was a reference to Bruce Maher in part four, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's a dual reference. If you look at his name tag, his name is Axel McCulley. So he's Axel and Billy McCulley. And the way that comes together is the backstory for Axel in Never Hike Alone is Axel's son.
Who's
And
Macaulay?
Billy McCulley is the attendant in part 5 who pulls up for Lana. He's like, snow
Oh,
flurries up your
oh,
nose.
I've interviewed him, Bob DeSimone. I've had him on
Yep.
the
So it's
show.
Bob DeSimone. And so my backstory is that Bob, like they all Bob had Billy had a sister. Axel slept with the sister. So it's a combination of the last name McCulley, and she named him after Axel because he was killed weeks after that Axel was conceived. So like
Oh,
the idea is that Axel was sleeping with a lot of nurses at the
not just
at,
Nurse Morgan?
no, I mean, you kind of
No.
get that sense from them that like he's a player at the beginning of the movie, that like he's probably not just stooping her, but he's probably giving the thing. So he accidentally impregnated Billy McCulley's sister, and so Axel in our movie is like a super Christie, if you want to say. He's a super creepoid. That's why he's so nasty. Because it was like he's the two most like misogynistic characters from the franchise just squished into one person. And so that's why we gave him like very vulgar he's looking at the Playboy, he says vulgar things. He's very much unchecked. And Axel will be coming back for Never Hike Alone 2 because we're going to see him alive a little bit longer. So we're going to get some more time with him. Robert will be back, and we'll have some fun with Axel McCulley. And we may even try to like weave in that like um, somehow he's related. And it'll be great. We'll try to tie that all in together.
Oh wow, I like that. I
But if
love how
not,
your
just know
mind
that that's
thinks.
kind of sometimes like we just don't hang a hat on it. Like we just put the name tag on there. It's a thing that if you miss the Easter egg, you're not going to know. But if you ask the right question, there's a story behind it. And like there's a lot of things in that like Never Hike Alone. So if fans ever want to come up to us at a convention and they got a question about, hey, I saw something in the background, or hey, I was looking, what does this mean? I got stories for days.
Oh, you know what? I look forward to it. You know what? Next year, when this is all out and whatnot, I'd love to have you back for a third go around.
We'd love to. We should probably talk once the next crowdfunding campaign gets out, so we can get the word out. I'm definitely going to be hitting the pavement hard on the marketing, so we should definitely talk then.
I look forward to it. I appreciate your time today, and
Hmm.
loved having you on. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
Doing my best.
I know
Just trying to keep the lights on.
Dave McRae has a lot of faith in you. I don't know Dave personally. I got to get him on here, but
Yeah,
I
he'd be
know he
great.
speaks so highly of you, and I've listened to the interview he did with you. So yeah, when I'm at work, I work as a cleaner. I'll listen to podcast stuff in my ear,
Hmm.
so it helps the shift
Oh
go.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
because
You get lost in the thing. You're doing your job, and then at the end of the day, you're
yep,
like, oh, it's done. Cool. I
because
do that all the time.
I don't break my interviews up into pieces. If a
Mm.
person's not going to invest in it, they're not going to listen, regardless whether it's
They'll
uh,
pick up later. You don't have to put
yep,
a break in it. You can just have them. They'll just pause it and say, I'll pick up on this episode where I left it. And if they don't
yeah.
find it interesting, I'm sorry. If you made
Well,
it
you
this
know
far,
what?
congratulations. You should get a marathon award.
Oh well, I had Craig Muckler from Microwave Massacre on here back in January, and he went 4 hours and 8 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
Yeah. So yeah, I've had some long ones, and it doesn't bother me at all. That's why it's recorded. It's not live. There's no issues.
Well, that's great. And I'm just happy to be here, really.
Well, I'll send you off my address, and I thank you so much for coming on here today. Before I let you go, I'd love a plug for my show.
Yeah, sure. You want to
Just
record that now, or do you want to record that
yeah,
after we get off?
I'm still recording. I'm not gonna break this up because if you make mistakes, it makes it extra fun.
Yeah. How would you
just,
how would you
just
like it?
just state your name and your involvement with Never Hike Alone, and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert, Python's Paradise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, this is Vincent DiSante. Oh, DiSante. I stuttered. Here we go. Hey everybody, this is Vincent DiSante, the director and Ghost Jason from Never Hike Alone, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Yes. And we're both part of 13 Fanboy. We're so
Yeah,
looking
and
forward to that.
co-producer on 13 Fanboy.
Yes. I know it's those two dogs. I'm not fooled for a second.
Well, it's going to be, trust me, wait till you see the rig that we had to get to those dogs in the costume. It's going to be great. Behind the scenes are going to be wonderful.
There you go.
All right, Greg, you have a wonderful day, my friend.
Thank you so much for the honor, man. And we'll talk again.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye bye.